quorum, so let's start by asking the clerk to take the roll.
Barbara,
Here.
Christina,
Here.
Dan Bozzuto. I know I saw him, so I'll.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, I was muted.
There you go. Okay. Elizabeth. Ellie.
Here.
Enrico.
Good evening.
Frank.
Here.
Frederick.
Here.
Garrick.
Here.
Jeremy. Oh, Jeremy Avila, sorry.
That's okay. Here.
Jeremy Bruce. Jose Posadas.
Here.
Luis Barocio.
He's just
Lund?
coming on now.
Okay.
Luis?
Hello, Luis here.
Okay.
Present.
Lund.
Present.
Linda.
Yes, I'm here, but I don't see me.
Yeah, I didn't see your name either. Magnolia will be here in a minute.
Present. I'm present.
Oh, okay. I was like, I just got a text from you. I couldn't respond because I was calling roll. Maria Fuentes.
I see.
Sammy Robledo.
Sammy's here.
Sherry. T.
Present.
Veronica.
Here.
Young.
Here.
And I have a couple I'm moving over from on the attendee side. I'm moving Linda and Luis. I'm going to go back through the ones I have absent. I have Elizabeth.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Jeremy Bruce.
Present.
Thank you. Maria Fuentes and Sherry Segura. And also, like, we did get a resignation this morning from Roshni. So we're working on filling that vacancy.
Madam Clerk, it appears that you have Sherry in the attendee side. Well, actually, she just disappeared.
Okay, but you have a quorum. You can proceed.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting of the San Jose Charter Commission. It's February 8th, and this is our regular commission meeting. I wanted to let commissioners know that not only are we being recorded, but we are being televised. So we're going to ask that you make sure that you say your name before so that our crew that's doing the taping piece can identify you more easily. I'll remind you throughout because I'm sure we're all going to forget, including myself. But I wanted to spend some time this evening. I'm going to walk you through the agenda in a minute, but I wanted to let you know that, and the public that's listening as well, I'm hoping that you see in our agenda review and the work that we're going to do tonight that we are trying to be as responsive to both the commissioners and the public's input to us. And so one of those changes already is the televising of all of our commission meetings. So let us begin with the consent calendar. I'd like a motion to adopt the consent calendar, which is the 2 sets of minutes. Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moves.
Moved by Jeremy Bruce, second.
Seconded.
And seconded by who? I didn't see.
Seconded by T-Tran, sorry.
Thank you, T. T-Tron is second. There's no discussion on a consent item agenda. Commissioners, remember that if you add an item to pull, we always can do that right before, but these are the minutes of our last two meetings. So I'm going to ask the clerk to take the roll for the vote.
Barbara,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Dan? Dan?
If it's Dan Bizzuto, yes.
Yes, sorry, I'm trying to speed things up and just do first names. Elizabeth? Elizabeth Monley? Ellie?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. Ellie?
Yes.
Enrico?
Aye.
Frank?
Yes.
Garrick?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Avila? Jeremy Bruce?
Aye.
Jose Posadas?
Yes.
Luis?
Yes.
Lund?
Aye.
Linda?
Yes.
Magnolia?
Yes.
Sammy?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
T?
Yes.
Veronica?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion carries, and so those minutes are adopted. Our next item is item 4A, which is report from the chair. Tonight, I wanted to just summarize quickly just some of my input to the response I've heard from commissioners and from the public in the last two meetings around our public engagement strategy and really making sure that we have a strategy and a plan. And that's really the work of tonight. So I've asked for our city staff, both clerk and our city attorney, to address the commission, answering questions that have come up, giving us guidelines and recommendations and suggestions, but really being able to answer your questions. So you'll be able to ask those questions directly, and both of the city clerk as well as the city attorney. And hopefully we can get some clarity on just procedural protocols around how do we give input, what do we do, how do we respond? Lots of engagements happening in the city right now. And so we want to make sure that our commission is, as some of you have said, we really want to be modeling the public engagement strategies that you, for other commissions and to the community. I also want to remind you that public comment after the attorney is going to be speaking and stuff, we always can go through the chair, if you know what that means in terms of Robert Rules of Order. Just if there's some comment that comes up from the community or someone or an issue that comes up that you want to address, you can always address that through the chair. We don't address the public, especially after public comment, but you always can move to ask the chair for whatever, right? So I can understand and hear comments, reflections, questions that you may have. Make sure that you go through the chair, and we can bring that back to staff during our week and then get responses or take actions as we move forward. Some people have asked questions about style and protocol and how we're kind of running meetings. And so I wanted to just take a minute before we get into the agenda itself to kind of just reflect a little bit of what some of my goals have been and what I'm trying to accomplish, especially in our early meetings as we begin to get to know each other and really formulate how do we work as a commission. You'll notice that I use the roundtable method a lot, and that is calling on each of you to respond. Now, my goal is a couple things. We are not in person, as we all know, and that's a real challenge on Zoom to keep everyone engaged and feeling like they can participate. And so early on, I wanted to use roundtable, and I'll continue to use that strategically when I think it's best to use, so that we do hear from everyone, and also that people practice, like getting onto the Zoom, getting your voice off so that no one's uncomfortable using the technology, and everyone's participating in the conversation. You know, as a college professor, I always know that 30% of the class is going to talk. So my job is really to make sure that the other 60%, 70%, the other folks that are kind of not the ones always communicate, feel like they're contributing and being able to participate. If you don't have something else to add to the conversation in a roundtable, you can always say, Mr. Chair, I'm fine, I pass. and we just keep moving on. But we want everyone, specifically because you represent different districts, to have that voice included. And that's kind of the purpose of roundtables, to make sure everyone's heard, everyone gets some, practice at just being able to speak up, and then we move forward. I'm also trying to make this as an efficient system as possible. And with 22 voices, that's not always going to be easy to do. So we will have times when we get to more what I'm hoping is informed discussions that we have, where Lawrence and I will be asking for comments and discussion and kind of some feedback and so forth, where we're not going through roundtable. But we really do want to make sure that those folks who have something to add to the conversation feel heard. And sometimes there's rules like, you don't have somebody speak again until everyone's spoken for the first time, or we'll just see how that goes. But I really want to make sure folks are included in the conversation. No one feels like they have to say something, but also people don't feel hesitant to add their voice. And if it isn't something you have something to add, that you feel fine not sharing at that moment for that particular item. We don't have to hear from everyone on every issue, except when we really need to, and then I'll call for more of a roundtable. We do have the raise hand function on most of you, hopefully on all your Zoom connections, but if that doesn't work, it's hard because we're on two screens to see everyone all the time. So Lawrence and I are hoping that we help each other catch that. So if I ever miss someone, feel free to unmute yourself and just stop me. Lawrence will do the same thing and I'll try to help him as well. But if you're using your raise hand function on Zoom, that's great. We can do that, or just raise your hand and I hopefully will be able to see you, because I want to make sure that if there are questions or so forth, we do hear from everyone, and I'm not trying to move on until we have heard folks. And the last thing I think is that tonight, we're going to hear from the city attorney and the city clerk to be able to answer some of the questions and the issues that you raised around access, translation, and noticing, and so forth and so on. I've asked the clerk specifically to walk through, and because we're now televised, I'm hoping this will be even more important, is to walk through the website and how to download the agenda and handouts. We did it as a second part of our meeting after the meeting last time, and I thought it was very informative. And I think just to access it from the public's perspective, it just makes it easier if we all walk through it together, so that no one commissioner feels like, did I get all the handouts? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And I think just having the clerk go through that instructionally for us, it'll really help make sure we're all getting equal access and easy access to the documentation. The city clerk and the staff are being, trying really hard to get all this information prepared and ready. We have to post a week in advance, which pushes a real tight timeline for the staff, our consultant, and myself to get this stuff turned around. But we're trying hard to be able to do that. So I wanted to have the clerk directly address us around how to access that. And as I say, since we're now being recorded, that'll make it easier for anyone that wants to come back to this meeting to really be able to see those things. So given that, I also want to make sure that we always have room for a public comment, and I appreciate the public paying attention to this really important commission's work, and we'll call for public input at different times, and they're a regular part of the schedule as well. The first thing I'd like to do tonight is to ask us to adopt our commissioner agreements. So you got the agreements, you gave us feedback around them, we've made the changes, the edits that you suggested, and now they're ready for adoption. And why I want to keep moving us on is adopting things means that for now, let's use these as our working rules that we think about and that we're conscious of and we're intentional about. If something comes up later and you're gonna, Mr. Chair, we did not have an intention around, we didn't have this engagement strategy, we need to, that's fine. But for now, let's keep moving by saying we've taken a time, we've had some ability to talk about it. We've got some edits that have come back to you. You've had a couple of weeks to kind of go through them in this process. And so I think I'm hoping that we're ready for adoption tonight. So I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt in a second, and then we'll open it up for conversation before we take a vote, if there's any conversation. Can I get a motion to put this on the floor, which is the adoption of our commissioner agreements, the draft that we had that was updated January 31st.
So moved, Linda Lazat.
Thank you, Linda Lazat. And a second, please.
Barbara Marshman, second.
Thank you, Barbara. Is there anyone that wants to speak to the item? Any discussion?
Hi, this is Tony.
Yes.
This item was not agendized for action. So we can add it to, like, everybody's okay with it. We can put it on consent calendar for the next meeting for the actual vote.
Okay, I thought it was on, the document I have says it is, but that's.
It was not worded where action was going to be taken. It was just showing that it was an update or a report.
All right, so then we're gonna bring it back next.
Yeah, we'll just put it on consent, so it'll go fast.
Thank you, awesome. All right, and now we had a presentation by our consultants last time about City Charter 101. That was a presentation that was made. The PowerPoint has been made public to the public. And at this time, I'm gonna ask for anyone having public comment about the City Charter 101 presentation, because now you've had a chance to go through and look at that presentation. It's been online. So is there anyone in the public, Madam Clerk, that is wishing to address the commission on the Charter 101 presentation?
Yes, I have 3 members of the public. The first one is Paul Soto.
Thank you. Let's, Mr. Soto.
Good evening, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. This is interesting that you went as far back as 1850 from the beginning of California's Constitution, city charter provisions. In 1850, from 1850 to 1852, San Jose was the capital of the state of California. At that time, Peter Burnett, on January 7th, 1851, stated, and I quote, "Among the more immediate causes that have precipitated the state of the frontier hostilities may be mentioned the neglect of the general government to make treaties with Indians for their lands. Suddenly spread ourselves Governor of California."
Madam Clerk, would you stop the clock?
Yeah, and I'm trying to mute him as well so I can tell him Paul, your audio is breaking up. So I'm gonna move on to the next person, and then I'll come back to you at the end. Alina?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
now.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to comment that I'm having trouble finding the I guess it's the agreements, commissioner agreements, and it's not posted anywhere, and so I couldn't really see where that was. But not regarding charter. Sorry about that.
Okay, Blair Beekman.
Hi, I had a question of procedure. Is this about last week's meeting or the meeting of last time, the 101 session?
Yes, sir. This is about the Charter 101, the City Charter 101 presentation that was made by our consultant.
Okay, yeah. From the meeting of last time where this was made, this presentation was made, I just wanted to offer a reminder of, to be open to public understanding. And there's a significant part of the population of San Jose that is considering, what are ideas of inviting the council more to the future process and the elected official process to more question the future of, say, the role of a city manager. and how can elected officials and the community have more power than before, not just the strong mayor. And it's learning those subtleties and possibly learning to shift the conversation from strong mayor into what is our decades-long tradition of working out community issues and reaffirming that it is a council, a process that is kind of the heart and soul of San Jose. That's kind of our tradition and how we work on that. I just wanted to make that yourselves aware of that and open, and that we can be, open to different ideas and ways to work. Thanks a lot.
Paul Soto?
Thank you, Tony. Can you please time me? There's no timer that appears, so I don't know, because I'm used to timing it that way.
It's actually, it's a little tiny, it's one of the speaker windows.
I don't have it on my phone.
Okay.
It's not appearing. So okay, well, can you give me 15-second warning? I'd appreciate it.
Yes, I will.
Okay, cool, thank you. Okay, now, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. I was reading the California's Constitution. What you're using as a reference point, as the beginning start point. California was the capital of the state of California between 1850 and 1852. At that time, Peter Burnett stated, "We have suddenly spread ourselves over the country in every direction and appropriated whatever of it we please to ourselves without their consent and without compensation." So you're using as your end quote. Now, and this is in Peter Burnett's public address, State of the Union address to the state of California. So everything that flows from that fruit is rotten fruit. It's rotten. It's polluted. We have to start over. As vile and offensive as that may be to some that are listening today, we're also doing this at a time when the issue of this magnitude is being done within the context of COVID. Okay, I'm being deprived of my constitutional right to challenge these grievances in person. So it's not even constitutional what it is that you're doing on its face. And so to just act like, oh, this is the same as regular government done when the person can be in the same room looking at people in the eye, to say that is insulting, especially considering that the first victim of COVID was here in San Jose. Also, number two, I would like an equity lens. I would like a representative of the Racial Equity Office to be in these meetings, and for all the decisions here to equity lens to be applied to everything that goes on here. Absolutely everything. Thank you, Tony. And so in conclusion, I would really suggest some people start doing their homework, especially about the influence that Judge William Almond had on these city charters. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers?
No, that was the last speaker.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate everyone's comments. Let's move to the new business in item A, civic engagement. Tonight, as I said, we're really trying to figure out what are the best ways for us to work both effectively and efficiently. How do we make sure that we are open to listening and hearing from our community and the representation that you bring from each of the districts and from the citywide, as well as we continue to move forward in an efficient way so that we can bring recommendations, a majority and a minority report back to the city council for their deliberation and for their decision making. And so tonight we're going to start with hearing from our city clerk and our city attorney. We also have two guests coming tonight to talk to us, representative of the community, to talk to us about some of the recommendations they have in terms of the work that they've done as in community organizing and community engagement processes. We'll have time for questions after as well. So each of the following speakers will have some time afterwards for questions from you. So I'm going to ask the city attorney first to address us, and then we'll have some time for questions of the city attorney, Manny.
Good evening.
Mr. Chair, sorry, just before we move on, I did have a question regarding the previous section.
Go ahead.
And tell me if I'm doing this according to the procedure that you laid out earlier. So where can we or members of the public find the commissioner agreements that will be on the consent agenda next time? Thank you.
They will be posted as a link on the agenda, and I'm also going to add them to the website.
And are they currently posted?
They are not currently part of this. They were not posted as part of the agenda last Monday. That's why I suggested they be brought back for consent calendar at the next meeting.
Thank you so much for that clarification.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Matsumoto. And now we're going to hear from our city attorney, Mark Vanny.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Vanny. As the chair said, I'm a representative on behalf of the city attorney's office, and have been assigned to staff this body. And so I understand there are some questions out there about civic engagement and what is and what is not permitted. Feel free if anybody has any questions, or it might be actually better to just let me give my spiel for a few minutes, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. So I just wanted to start real quick with what this body is. And the Charter Review Commission was a body that was, as I'm sure many of you know, was established by the council last year. It was established by resolution of the council, and in that resolution, it sets out the process for appointment of the commission, as well as the topics that the council wants the commission to look at. So it's subject matter jurisdiction. And so the Charter Review Commission is known as an advisory body without decision-making authority. And so what does that mean? Well, what the council is looking for is just that, a body to provide advice, recommendations, and in this case, there'll be a report that comes out from this commission, as well as a minority report. And but it's not binding on anybody. It is just a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council can then take that report and either move forward with it, not move forward with it, make modifications to it, and so on. And in this particular case, since we're dealing with issues like the charter, ultimately whatever ends up going forward, if it is indeed a recommended change, will need to be put forward to the voters, and the council will have to put that on the ballot. Now, in terms of what is and what is not okay with respect to civic engagement, the resolution that establishes this commission doesn't set out many parameters. There are other commissions that the council has set up recently, one being the Redistricting Commission, which is yet to meet, and that commission has, in the resolution that establishes it, a number of parameters that limit what it can and cannot do outside of a public meeting. Those parameters are not, do not apply to this commission because they're not set forth in the resolution from the council. However, the commission could, as a body, decide to adopt some or other measures like that, and I'll get to the mechanism by which the commission may do that. The council also has a policy 0-4 for any of you who has served on other boards and commissions for the city. There is a policy that applies to all commissions, all commissions that are established either by the city charter or by the municipal code, that limits what members of those commissions can and cannot say, and how they can use their title, and so on and so forth. Again, that doesn't directly apply to this commission because the policy is limited to commissions that are established by the city charter, which this commission is not, and those that are established by the municipal code, which again, this commission is not. That being said, this commission can adopt some or all of those limits if it so chooses. There are certain things in there that as a body, the commission may want to consider, particularly around what, in terms of what communication comes out of the commission and so on, what is being said on behalf of the commission as opposed to what is being said by individual commissioners. And so Council Policy -4, for anybody that's interested, can be found on the city's website. And one of the things that's also in Council Policy -4 are model bylaws that commissions establish for themselves. This commission can, if it so chooses, establish bylaws. You're not bound by the model because of the, again, the policy doesn't apply directly to this body. But it is a good starting point if it is something that the commission wants to pursue. And that's something that the city attorney's office, in conjunction with the city clerk, can assist in putting forward. And then, of course, the limitations or other things. And bylaws can have things, you know, do you use Robert Rules of Order, what time the meetings are, where the meetings are, when they are, and so on and so forth are set forth in the bylaws. And then in terms of other laws, and you know, what we're really concerned with, you know, I focused on kind of city policy. Again, those don't directly apply to you, but they could. But laws that do apply to you, the two biggies are the Brown Act and the Public Records Act. When all of you should have had a Brown Act training that was provided by the city clerk's office. I don't want to repeat that, although I do have one slide about a recent change in the law that I want to go over with you. But our big concern with the Brown Act is serial meetings. And serial meetings are those type of meetings. They're like a game of telephone where one person says something to somebody else, who says something to somebody else, and then before you know it, you've got a majority of the commission. Now, this is a large commission, so a majority would be 11 members, and that is a lot of people, but it's possible, particularly if somebody is sending out email blasts and things like that to commissioners. So we want to avoid serial meetings wherever possible. And so, you know, one of the exceptions under the Brown Act is going to publicize community meetings. So in the context of the city council, for example, a number of city council members, a majority in fact, can go to a publicized community meeting and attend and speak on issues. The issue that they're concerned about is whether or not they speak among themselves. And then also whether or not they are getting into the business of taking action on a particular item or deliberating amongst themselves. We want to avoid that scenario because that's a Brown Act violation. And if there is a community meeting out there that where a majority of the members or all the members may want to attend, then we might want to notice that as a public meeting. And so serial meetings are a big concern for our office. When commissioners and members of a legislative body are going out into the public and where they might engage with other members of the commission. And there is one recent change in the law that occurred, that went into effect just this year on January 1st. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everybody. And so it has to do with social media. So this was a bill, AB 992, enacted in January 1, 2021, and it's effective through January 1, 2026. So you guys will be done with your work by that point. But it's for a 5-year period unless extended by future legislation. And the reason that it was enacted was because there were some concerns or confusion about, well, what constituted a serial meeting over social media, considering how public it is. And the law says that social media can be used to answer questions from the public, provide information to the public, and solicit information from the public. And I have counsel in there, but it's oops, excuse me. Did you guys lose my screen? Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry about that. And solicit information from the public on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction. I have counsels there. That's a typo. It should be within the commissioner's subject matter jurisdiction. The one thing that you can't do on social media, just like in at a community meeting or something like that, is you can't use it to discuss matter within your subject matter jurisdiction among a majority of the members. And discuss means things like favoriting, emojis, any type of expressive reaction. So it's not just, you know, communicating with somebody through written form, it's any form that you might be able to use on social media. So, for example, if a resident were to comment on something about the Charter Review Commission's work, and 12 members were to either thumbs up or thumbs down it, that would potentially run afoul of this legislation. And the most specific issue, or the most consequential issue for everybody, is that you cannot respond directly to any social media communication from another commissioner. And this and so if you had picked up a phone with another commissioner or had been at a community meeting and just there's somebody else there and you had talked amongst each other, that's fine. But with AB 992, it prohibits that. So if somebody were to tweet something, say you use Twitter and you were to tweet something about the Charter Review Commission, another commissioner cannot respond directly to that tweet. It remains to be seen whether sharing, retweeting, things like that would also run afoul of this a newly enacted law. It's just too new, and it hasn't really been either litigated and no other city attorneys that I'm aware of have dealt with it. So at this point, what we're telling everybody is to just be cautious when with other social media posts that another commissioner posts. And social media has a broad, is expansive under this. So it's not just your typical Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but it's any online platform that is otherwise free and available to the public and doesn't require any special permission to be on it. So things like YouTube would be covered, blog sites, WordPress, Medium, things like that. So Reddit is another one. So I mean, it can encompass a lot of different things. And as I said, it's relatively new. So as things develop, we'll provide more information as we learn more about this. And so for that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And as I mentioned at the top, the other thing that we're really concerned with is public records. Just so that everybody's aware, I don't know if you've been given city emails by the city clerk's office, but one thing with the Public Records Act, there was a case involving the city of San Jose that applies statewide now, that information, public records that are disseminated on personal devices or through personal accounts can be subject to disclosure under the Public Records Act. So we advise everybody not to use personal email accounts to communicate with members of the public. It makes it difficult for us, if there was a public records request, to bring all that material and collate it all together, because then we have to ask everybody to look through their Gmail accounts and things like that. It's much easier if everything goes through city servers, or in the alternative, everything comes into a singular location and then it can be addressed in a public meeting. But we want to be mindful of any types of communication that you're putting in the written form that's about the subject matter or within the subject matter of this commission or the city's business related to what you guys are doing, could be a public record subject to disclosure. And so wherever possible, keep it on city official servers, materials, and things like that. And so with that, I'll open up the floor to any questions that anybody might have about this. But that concludes my presentation for the evening.
This is the chair. Mark, would you do me a favor though? One of the questions that came up is, so if you are getting on your city email address information from the public, what should your response be, or what should or not should not be? And then also, what is the communication between commissioners as well?
So I'll take the second question first, because there is a kind of a clear legal answer for that. I would suggest keeping communication among commissioners to a minimum outside of a public meeting. Again, as I mentioned, we want to avoid the scenario of a serial meeting and it becomes difficult. And again, I know there's a number of commissioners on this body, but that can make it harder to keep track. And so there is an exception under the Brown Act for standing committees and ad hoc committees that are composed of less than a majority of the members of the commission. And if there is going to be official action where, say, these 5 commissioners are going to focus on this particular issue, then it would be permitted for them to talk among themselves about that issue. We're concerned about them going outside of that group, outside of a public meeting. So wherever possible, I'd minimize that type of communication. Or if you are going to engage in that type of communication with another commissioner, be mindful about who they might be speaking with. And so or avoid hitting the reply all button, things like that, so that we don't have issues with serial meetings. To answer your first question about what the commission how the commissioner should respond, I don't want to punt the issue, but it is largely up to the commission itself at this point. Under Council Policy 0-4, there are limitations for members of other boards and commissions about when speaking on behalf of themselves. They should include a disclaimer to that effect, that this is not the view of the entire body, unless that is something that the body has authorized that particular commissioner to speak on. In the case of the chair, for example, there are a number of things that the chair is authorized to speak on that other members of the commission are not authorized to speak on. But that is all subject to the commission's determination at this point. My suggestion, just because I've seen it become an issue in other bodies, is if you are going to respond to a member of the public about a personal opinion or something, that make it clear in the response that it is that commissioner's personal opinion and not the opinion of the commission itself, or that it's something that hasn't been determined yet. But again, there aren't any limitations at this point on how everybody should respond. And so that answers, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Questions from commissioners? If you want to raise your hand, I'll start.
I saw Magnolia earlier. I don't know, Magnolia, if that was for this section, but I have you first in our stack here.
Thank you so much. Just to follow up, Frederick, on what you were saying, Commissioner Ferrer, my understanding from Tony Tabor, the city clerk, is we are not supposed to give any opinions at all or signal how we might vote on a certain topic. So I'm not sure how that squares with what our good city attorney was saying regarding it's fairly open on how we respond as long as we're saying it's our opinion. It seems still a little bit blurry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I was probably inartful about my use of the term opinion. Yes, you don't want to, if there is something pending before the body about a particular item, it is best to avoid saying how you're going to vote on a particular issue, because again, that could run afoul of the Brown Act. If somebody knows how you're going to vote, that can be disseminated publicly, and then other members doing the same thing, and before you know it, you've got a serial meeting that's going on. If people are concerned about how to deal with the public, one of the best things to do is either refer them to come and speak at the public meeting, ask that the clerk put the question either on the agenda in the form of a public record or something like that, and then the issue can be discussed in an open and public meeting.
Just quickly, if there's a member of the public who actually wants to have substantive discussions with a commissioner on a topic, can we have substantive discussions? Say on articles, for example, that we're reading.
On art, I'll defer to the best judgment of the commissioner. I mean, if you want to talk about a particular issue that's coming in the city, for example. But again, the suggestion would be to include a disclaimer that that's a personal statement and not speaking on behalf of the commission itself. But again, yes, the city clerk is correct. And I apologize for using the term opinion. I'm glad you brought it up the way we don't want you talking about how you are going to vote on a particular issue if it's something that's on a noticed agenda or you know that it's going to come before before this body.
And I have Jose, and then Jeremy. I don't know if you had your hand up either, but Jose, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Jose Posadas. So if a member of the public does provide me either information or documents of whatever nature, what's the process for getting that information, that document into the public record, especially if it's coming through, for example, an email?
I'm going to go ahead and defer to the city clerk on that one because that is a procedural issue. Tony, do you want to answer?
If you have anything, and I've heard my camera is wonky, so I'm going to stay off camera. If you have anything that you want, that you receive from the public that you want to share with everybody on the commission, you just send it to me or to Megan, and we'll post it as a letter from the public to the next agenda.
Thank you.
Before we go to Ellie, Jeremy Baruch, did you have your hand up earlier?
Oh, no.
Okay, good. I saw you raising your hand. I didn't know if you were scratching or hand up. Yeah. Ellie, Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation to Mark and to the clerk as well for your answers. So just to confirm, following up on Commissioner Siegel's question, so we legally, it is within the confines of the Brown Act to express an opinion, say how we're going to vote on a certain issue to a member of the public. But if we do so, we take the risk that that information would then be disseminated more broadly and cause a Brown Act violation via serial meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's the concern as well, that by and large, the disclosure of how you're going to vote on a particular item would lead to a serial meeting and therefore a Brown Act violation.
Okay, thank you. And then sort of parallel question for communication with other commissioners. Legally, we can communicate with, let's see, 23-member commission, one person, so up to 10 other commissioners on a particular topic and not have reached a majority, but there's the risk that it is hard to keep track, and so there's just the risk of intentionally or unintentionally violating the Brown Act in that type of communication.
Correct, and in this particular instance, you have somebody who's resigned, so that threshold might be lower, and so again, it's very important to keep in mind who you're having communications with and discussing things with. And our best practices is to avoid having those type of discussions outside of a public meeting. That way you don't ever run into that issue or have that concern. And the commission, as I mentioned earlier, can follow other regulations or rules that are established for other boards and commissions for the city as well, either in Council Policy 0-4 or that have been set forth in resolution. And so to the extent that those laws are agreed to or enacted by this body in some sense, then that would apply.
I'm sorry, just one more. You talked about sort of the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission, particularly in relation to social media communication. And I imagine this is not a super clear-cut one to answer, but how do we understand the bounds of the subject matter jurisdiction, given that city charters can touch a lot of topics?
Yeah, you've raised a good point. I think on one end, if somebody posts a picture of their pet or something like that, you're free to comment on that pet. Given the broad grant of responsibilities that the council has given to this body in terms of looking at the charter, you do need to be mindful if there's going to be something that you could think could conceivably govern by the charter, that would be within the subject matter of this group and should not be discussed among members on social media.
Okay, question from Lund.
Thank you. Hey, Mark. I know you mentioned it earlier, but I think it bears coming from you again. This commission doesn't have any binding authority. That's right?
Not presently. The only thing that's binding, so to speak, is the resolution that the council has put forward at this point. Of course, and then the legal parameters under the law, the Brown Act, Public Records Act, Sunshine Resolution, setting forth timings for agendas and things like that. But the limitations are in the resolution are what you guys are supposed to look at.
Right. So our objective as a commission is to discuss the 3 or 4 questions outlined by the council and write 2 reports, 1 majority opinion, 1 minority opinion to send their way. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And could you help us understand what the council will do with our commission or our reports once we send them?
Good question. The council will review those reports and will either, if it's going to go forward with it. I mean, again, it all depends on what this body recommends. If you do recommend an amendment to the charter, then the council will, and the council goes along with that recommendation, it will put forward a ballot measure calling an election. And it could be in June of 2022, it could be November of 2022, it could be a special election, but then put it on the ballot for the voters to decide.
So, but the council is not limited to our AB, like we should this, we should not. They could just take that as information, our reports, and decide something else completely to put before the voters. Is that right?
That's correct. The council has the authority to put forward any ballot measure it wants on amending a charter. I mean, there are some limitations there, but in terms of timing and things like that, but that's correct. The council is not otherwise bound by this body's determination.
Okay, thank you. I just want to use the rest of my time just real quickly to, it was mentioned earlier, I think in another meeting by I think a public commenter that what we're doing here is akin to a constitutional convention. And I've made that same analogy before, but I think, you know, in light of what Mark is telling us and upon further reflection, I think it's more accurate to say what we're doing as the 23 of us, the 22 of us, is writing the Federalist Papers. So we're really like hashing out like what is the best course forward, and it's not binding. It's just ideas. It's just fiercely outlining thorough, thoughtful opinions, and then letting that be put forth for the council to decide. And even the council doesn't decide because they send it to the voters, and ultimately the voters decide. So I just want to.
I'd like to just pause on editorialization right now and limit it to questions because we do have both the city council, city clerk, and additional guests.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Any final questions before we move on to the city clerk's presentation? Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. And we will inevitably have more questions for you. So please stick around today and throughout the process. Back to you, Chair Ferreira.
So we're now going to hear from the city clerk, and a lot of questions have also come up that aren't the legal questions, but are really procedural questions. And so we've asked the city clerk to outline your responses to some of the questions that have been asked. And as I said, I've also asked her to walk through the process for accessing information directly from the public to understand our agendas, the handouts, and so forth. So I'm going to turn it over to our city clerk.
Hi, I just checked my camera and I'm still upside down. I don't know why that's happened. So I'm going to stay off video. So I have a few things that shouldn't take too long. First of all, we are now being broadcast live on YouTube and on cable channel 26, which is very exciting. I'm very grateful to Craig in the city manager's office who agreed to do that. And he's the one doing all the work right now. So thank you, Craig. Another question that people have brought up, or another issue, is having interpretation at meetings. We will definitely have interpretation at some of the public hearings. We don't have it at every meeting because it's about $400 per hour to have 2 languages at a meeting, and we are just not budgeted in the city. We don't have it for interpretation for every meetings. Tomorrow's city council meeting, we have interpretation because we know we've got some topics that we're going to need that service for. So we will have public hearings for this meeting that will be noticed in multiple languages, but it won't be every single meeting. And then we've also been asked about translation of the agendas and attachments. The agendas and attachments, because I've asked this question before, it's 7 to 10 days to get translations. We post 1 week ahead. I would not have translations done until the meeting is over. We will have some documentation that will be translated for outreach that we're working on to make sure. So notices for interpreted meetings will be translated and put into multi-language newspapers. But we won't have it for every agenda. We just don't have the time. And then it's also pretty expensive. It's not the same as translating a letter because we have a lot of technical language. It takes them longer because they're not commonly translated items in city government. We're moving on to resources at hand. We have staff available. Right now we have Megan Roach, who is in the meeting right now as the co-host. We also have some interns, and I have one intern present today, Karina Mejia. She's present as well. Today's her first day as an intern, and she is your intern. So when we need to have research done, in addition to Megan, we'll have Karina, and we have a couple other interns who are also interested. So we're going to have some staff available to you, which is very exciting. You have some access to other city staff. My staff right now is just really, really busy. We're not an office that can ever postpone items. You know, we have agendas and public records requests and bills to pay. So all of our stuff, even during COVID, goes on as if COVID doesn't exist. So most of my staff is quite busy, but you have the interns, and I'm very excited. They're college students and graduate students. So I think the quality of research will be good. Megan pulled up a bunch of city charters that we're going to be posting to the website this week, which goes into my next thing, a description of the website and posting practices. So I'm going to do a quick share screen. There's also a video that's been posted to YouTube. If you search for San Jose City Clerk, I posted a little, it's about 7.5-minute tutorial on how to find things on the agenda. So if you go to, let me go to the main city webpage. So if you go to the main city webpage and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, this is the quickest way, and click on meeting agendas. It takes you to this. So this page has all of the agendas for the upcoming week. And then it also has this section down here. So if you want to see Charter Review Commission, you would select that. Notice nothing shows up because I've got this time frame set for 2020. So move it to 2021. And here's where you can see all of the meetings. So you can see the meeting agenda. If you click on just agenda right there, this PDF downloads. This is probably the easiest because it'll show everything that's attached as a blue link. And then for the cities, if you go to the city clerk's webpage and click on charter review, I did not put you under boards and commissions, so you wouldn't have to like click to get to you. I put you like right up here on the side. So if you click on Charter Review Commission, there's 2 pages, there's documents and then the main page. Documents are also linked down here. We tried to make it as easy as possible for people. It has the meeting day and time, a direct link to the agendas, a link to YouTube, letting people know about channel 26, the Zoom link, and that the documents are here. And this is where we're going to put up some of the research that we've been doing. So here's the 1985 historical documents. The directions from council. Will be putting the work plan up on this page as well. We had some issues with website permissions last week. So just trying to get Megan trained in the web page, but we needed to get her access. So there's a slight delay. After this week, everything should be going up the same week you need them. So they'll first go to the agenda. When they're done with the agenda, we'll pop them over here onto documents. And then That's all of my topics. So now I'm available for questions.
Do you want to
Thanks.
talk about the Granicus public engagement software, Tony?
Yes, well, I'm working with Granicus to see if there is, they have a couple products. So we're looking at those products that we'll be able to put documents up and have people comment on them instead of just static documents. So I'm still working on that. That would be very exciting. We do have an e-comment feature where people can comment on agenda items, more like a forum. But what we really want is something really interactive for people. So I'll have an update for that at the next meeting. That should have enough time because our next meeting is, I'm going back to the charter review website because it's there. Our next meeting after this is actually a month from now, March 8th. So I should have if we have the product and it works, we'll have it up by then.
Thank you for your responses to our questions. Questions for the city clerk?
Commissioner Matsumura?
Thank you. I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about the requirement to have materials posted a week in advance, since it seems like it's, presenting some challenges in terms of our ability to be nimble and also our ability to have materials for commissioners and the public to see for the meeting. I just wanted to understand more about the nature of that.
Not every single document needs to be posted ahead of time. So if there's a PowerPoint presentation, a lot of times we don't get those until like the day of, and that's true for council as well. The main thing, and this is Brown Act, more than sunshine, the main thing that needs to be posted is the action, the language, so action is going to be taken. Like the current language I have for today did not indicate the posted language did not indicate we were going to have a motion on the work plan. The working agenda that Lawrence and Frederick they had put it on theirs, but by then it was too late for me to post. Any action has to be posted a week ahead. Ideally, all of the documents should be posted a week ahead, but sometimes other letters to the public get posted afterwards. Supplemental memos get posted after that day. Like if you go to a city council agenda, the city council agenda is posted 10 days ahead. But in that 10-day period, we'll get a supplemental memo from staff because additional information has come about. We get letters from the public. We get letters from the city council. All of those can be posted after that initial posting. But that week ahead should have, if you're going to take an action on something, it really should be there so you guys have a week to review it, and the public has a week to review it, so they know if they want to attend and they know what you're going to talk about.
Thanks, Tony. And just a little mea culpa on our part. Fred and I now meet on a weekly basis, and we're still getting our rhythm down to make sure we can be responsive to your requests, design the right agendas, and then get the speakers and get the materials. So we're getting our machinery well tuned here. So thank you for your patience as we get there. And it is our goal and commitment to make sure as much as we can get posted a week in advance for you all to review as happens. So thank you. Luis. We're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Your connection is a little fuzzy. I wonder if maybe it's your headphones.
Is this better?
It is, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, my question is along those lines of having things show up on the agenda. How far in advance, and I think this question is for Tony. Tony, how far in advance should someone send you a resource or a link or a letter to be reviewed or a memo so it ends up on the agenda?
Well, we ask people, like if you want to send something last minute, we do ask that it be sent to us by 9 a.m. the day of the meeting to give us time to react and get it posted. but we can post things later. But if you want something agendized, like you're like, I want to talk about this item and I want us to be able to take action on it, I need to know ahead of that week, because what Megan and I draft the agenda on the Thursday before we post it. So we post on a Monday, we draft it on Thursday, and then we'll send it to the chair and the consultant for review. And then they can add things to it on Monday. That way we post by 5 p.m. on Monday. So ideally a week ahead if it's supplemental material, like, oh, the civic engagement is on the agenda. And I saw this really cool article on civic engagement. I think I would like people to see. You can send it to us anytime up until 9 o'clock the day of the meeting to guarantee we attach it. Anything after 9 a.m. might get attached, but it might just have to be distributed at the meeting, like with a share screen. I feel like I took much to answer that, sorry.
No, thank you. I think having an understanding of when things will get linked and show up either in the parts of the agenda that you mentioned or under recommendation attachments is good to know. So then folks would be able to, have it in. So then in the first announcement or in the first blast, it's already there. So thank you, Tony. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And Commissioner Segura.
Hi. I just really kind of want to know, I mean, I get, translation and I get all of that, but I just have to say, it makes me pretty concerned that if you don't speak English, you can't participate. It's so limited. Do we know, I mean, what's the percentage of time that you guys will do that for people who can't access in English?
I can't tell you the percentage of time. We're definitely we will absolutely 100% have public hearings before you approve and send to council. And we'll look at the work plan topics. And if it's one where we're getting a lot of interest, then we can request it. But it's really a meeting by meeting basis. That's how we do it for city council. I'm not always the one who even makes the call. Sometimes I don't know something as a topic. I do rely. So if you look at a topic and you're like, oh, like this one's really, really controversial, we really need to have it, you just let me know. Sometimes when we're having meetings like this, where we're like, these to me are place setting meetings as we get ready to talk about the meat of your topics. I don't know if that has as much value. I have to look at, I'm spending taxpayer dollars. I try to spend them where I'll have the best result. So I can't tell you how many, but you're definitely going to have them.
Commissioner Percival.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a question on some of the historical documents that Tony, you were showing us on the website. I'm assuming those will be added to over time if there's additional research that's done.
Yes.
And so the public has full access to those.
Yes, they have full access. I think Megan downloaded 10 or 11 charters last week. We're going to put those PDFs up this week. I'm going to show her how to update the website.
Okay, great. And then my other question was related to any research articles, other kind of news reports that the commission might rely on over time. Would those, I'm hoping those also would be available to the public. Would that be on that website as well, or would that be part of the agenda?
We're going to put them, they'll be both. If you're going to talk about them at the meeting, they have to be attached to the agenda, but we're also going to put them here. It's easier for us to find it. It's easier for you. I know you guys are all going to want to do kind of a lot of reading on your own to prepare for meetings because you have such a short time frame to do so much work. So it's all going to be on that website, so members of the public can go there and look as well. I'll probably keep adding tabs under charter review. Like right now, I just have charter review commission documents. I might add one that's like research. So it's, this is just research documents. We'll keep it organized. I try to keep it simple. I don't want people to have to click tab after tab after tab. I try to keep things easy for everyone. But yeah, we're making this a landing page for everyone.
Okay, Great, thank you.
Additional questions for Tony right now? All right. Thank you, Tony. Thank you all. I'll pass it back to the chair. And Tony, if you could just let us know if our guests are in the waiting room yet. We are just a little bit ahead of schedule, so.
They should have I sent them direct links into the panel.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm looking for them.
Thank you both to our city clerk and the city attorney. And as you continue to have questions, please make sure that we hear them so that we can all, I think it's great for everyone to hear kind of the same thing at the same time. I wanted to do a couple of things as well, just to add to this discussion of the public engagement piece. We're looking at how do we notice this meeting in other ways, especially at those public hearings that are translated. How are we going to get the word out on those noticing? Because I look at it as kind of three parts. You know, who knows about the meeting? What's the meeting and what's happening at the meeting? And then what happens after the meeting? So if I'm thinking about civic engagement, it's making sure that the right folks are hearing, giving us input, whether they're giving us input, whether we have, you know, folks to bring it in, and then what do we do with it when we hear it? Who needs to hear it? How do we want to get input around it? What's our discussion and questions about? And then what happens afterwards? And so one of the questions that has come up from commissioners has been around, how do we address the public? And I've taken the stand that we don't directly address the public in their public comments. Again, you can, through the chair, ask a question. I'll give you an example. The junior, you know, somebody saying, oh, we're studying this as well. You know, a commissioner could say, Mr. Chair, you know, that'd be interesting for us to look at that, right? I can give direction to the city clerk that that's something we should do. If something's very specific that you think is important for us to take action on, I certainly would. I'd be open to hearing that piece. But just to be clear, we really listen to all public input, and we have a discussion about all of it. So it's not like you have to tell us that before we're going to look at it. It's going to be like taken into consideration on all these issues. And the public will receive responses to their comments at the following meeting if there's something specific that was asked and the staff needs to research it, something like that. We might come back at the next meeting, and usually in my comments or in the clerk's comments, there was a question about this last week, we researched it, and here's the response. So not necessarily the next week, but the next meeting. And so we're trying to make sure that we are responsive to the public, not to have discussion, that's not at the appropriate time to do that, but to really be able to be responsive over time. And I think the last thing I would say, just in terms of how we're trying to formulate this and put this together, is that we would like to be able to, after tonight, kind of have a plan, you know, kind of a different organizational plan that we add to our work plan. So in the original draft of the work plan, that was another challenge I think I've learned, is everything needs to get marked draft until we actually take action on it, or we agree that this is the document we want to use for now. I did not mean to, when I was setting up the calendar and just kind of showing you examples of what we could do, I should have marked that draft so that people would not think, oh, on that day, this is going to happen. I was trying to give you a draft of what we could do in a 6-month period in this kind of a work plan. But my error was I didn't mark the whole thing draft so that we could just really have a conversation about it. We'll be bringing back the work plan next meeting to be able to say, okay, let's add in the civic engagement piece. The original work plan I had set up, I think 4 to 6 public hearings, and I know that there's more than more after tonight. We'll be able to decide what are other kinds of things that we want to see in the plan. So you'll get the new draft of the work plan, including civic engagement ideas or practices that you'd like to see in that plan for us to discuss at our next meeting. I do want to underline the timeline issues. We get our notes back from our meetings in 2 days, which is pretty fast. And then Lawrence and I meet about them, and then we start formulating the agenda at that point, so that once we get it from the clerk, we can amend it so that it can get posted on Monday. So that's a very short amount of time for us to turn around this meeting, get ready for the next meeting, and have all the documents. If you wanted to see guests and so forth, being able to plan for that, invite folks, get all those pieces together. The timelines are very tight. So I appreciate, as Lauren said, your patience, and as we're trying to get this speed right and get it in a space that makes sense to all of us. I do appreciate your patience as well, because we're really trying to get this right. And as I say, we really want to act like a model commission on public engagement. Okay, our speakers, our guests.
They are not here yet, Fred. So I'm wondering if so I'm wondering if we want to just, one of the things that we wanted to do was to the point of the work plan is to get more of a list of the topics that you want to hear about, and then leave time for the public to make comment on those topics, as some of the commissioners have requested. So to meet that turnaround time and to post within a week, well, we'll have some time, but we wanted to start to get a list of potential study topics in addition to what we've already suggested from you now, and give you time to think about it and collect additional input from the public, and then present it to make a final decision to inform the work plan the next time we meet. So Fred, I'm wondering if maybe we could do a quick roundtable to get thoughts.
I'll do that right next to
Okay.
I see your hand up, and Magnolia, I see your hand. So
Great.
Barbara Marshman.
Sorry. Quick question on procedure. I like the idea of being able to react to, sorry, I'm echoing. To react to the public comment that we would like to follow up on. Would you like us to do that, to put our hands up immediately after that person has spoken? Or would you rather we save that till the end of the public comments and then address the chair?
I think it'd be easier if we just do it at the end of public comments, so you listen to the whole thing and then do the follow-up if there's something specific that you want us to make sure we heard. Again, feel free not to say every single time that, oh boy, we should talk about this, because those are things that we should be able, we're listening to all public comment, including the letters. Tonight, we had a speaker who also sent us a letter. So it's also something that we're taking, if people are putting things in writing, we're also reviewing those as well. Magnolia.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferrer. A topic that I think should be addressed is one that's come up in comments throughout the short life so far of this commission, and that is a third alternative to government form. So people have mentioned it, but they haven't been specific, and no one has sent us anything. So I would just encourage the chair, when the chair hears public comment about this commission being open to a form of government other than strong mayor or weak mayor, sorry to use those terms. If Commissioner Ferrer, if you could ask them to send us anything that they think we should actually look at, and alternatively, if perhaps Lawrence or whoever is doing the research, if they could possibly include a couple of alternative forms so that the members of the public who keep bringing this up, who are attending, who do want this topic heard, could feel heard. That would be something I would add.
Great idea. Thank you. Jeremy Avila.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize to my colleagues and to the chair, but I've received a message regarding an urgent matter that I need to excuse myself for. So I will try to join as quickly as possible, but I wanted to offer my apologies to my colleagues and let you know so that you don't wonder why I just disappeared.
Thank you. Hope everything's okay. Commissioner Johnson. Vice Chair Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Another thing that I noticed the work plan didn't include was campaign finance reformed, and I was wondering, was there a reason for that omission, and could we include it in the work plan?
So that's one of the topics that should go on the list for sure. Thank you. Elizabeth.
Unmute myself there. Yeah, I'd like to really have kind of a little in-depth discussion about the history of this particular issue and the formation of the commission. I think it will really help guide us as we go forward.
And can I ask for a clarifying question? When you say this particular issue, do you mean this charter review commission?
That's before us, charter review and the issues regarding strong mayor and mayor council. All of this is
and the history in
big
San
topic.
Jose or history?
In San Jose.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
Before us.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you. Actually, just a quick question. You stated it real quickly at the beginning, but right now we're just kind of kicking off a list of topics the potential study topics to start building that.
Yeah, our intended process here is to collect an initial list from you all to get the gears turning as far as ideas, to compile that list and post it publicly and accept within the next 3 to 4 days other ideas from the public. So this is also an invitation to the public to send topics to the city clerk. And then we would post a final list of those study session topics and then do some kind of straw poll to or discussion at our next meeting to really refine that list and inform a more specific work plan and inform us about what additional speakers and or research we need to do. And we've heard that you all wanted to talk a bit more about the topics to be discussed. So this is the way we're going to do that. This does not need to be a final list. If you have additional thoughts that come up, we'd love to hear them. But just since we had a couple minutes before our 2 speakers joined us, we thought we'd start now. They're here, so I would encourage us to do just a quick share out, any topics just off the top of your head. Try to minimize editorialization. Just would love to hear what you want to hear more about as a way to, again, start that process. Is that clear?
And sorry, just very quickly as a follow-up on that, my understanding based on our last meeting is that we were going to spend phase 1 making sure that we had sort of a thorough exploration of potential topics and make sure that the public hearing in March would inform the topic. So you mentioned finalizing this list at the next meeting, and then I'm trying to sort of mesh that with the discussion we had at the last meeting.
So what we're trying to do is just get the list of topics to get the parameters of what we're talking about. Our first public hearing would be about, like, here's the work we're doing, here's what we're thinking, and to get that as well. So we're having 2 opportunities for public input. It can be this week publicly, just to get us the parameters. I have a feeling that we're going to have a lot of things on the list. And so it's going to be able to, for the commissioners to kind of weigh in and then be able to listen to the public in a public hearing as well.
Yeah, and I will add that there is also a need for us to really understand where the topics of greatest interest among the commissioners are as soon as possible, so that we can get ahead of this curve that we're behind as far as getting agendas out and getting speakers scheduled. So there'll be additional time for and opportunities for public input, but we just wanted to get this process started now.
I saw Luis's hand first, and
since our guests have arrived, again, Luis Barocio, since our guests have arrived, I can wait till we get more time afterwards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any others? Great. And I see both of them here. Awesome. All right. So I wanted to introduce our 2 guests this evening, and long-term colleagues that I really appreciate their kind of, again, in this week, trying to get scheduled to bring them in tonight. So I really appreciate them joining us this evening. Trying to really spend some time tonight talking about what does civic engagement look like for us? How do we keep it in an efficient manner, but a really effective tool? And what are the tools that we have available to us? Hopefully the city attorney and the city clerk tonight helped us kind of formulate what tools are available and what are not, and where are the restrictions and where the restrictions don't lie. But listening to 2 members of our community, both have been engaged in civic engagement at the neighborhood as well as the city policy level for many years, both running nonprofit agencies and organizations that are truly on the forefront of what's going on in our community. And so I've asked them both tonight to be able to just share with us their ideas, their thoughts, their recommendations, kind of just their best thinking about from their experience working in this city on public policy issues similar to the ones that we're talking about as a commission, to give us some input in terms of their thinking, their best thinking, and what advice they may give us. And then we'll have some time for questions and dialogue with them as well. I don't know which one wants to go first, but I wanted to introduce Poncho Guevara, who's our Executive Director of the Sacred Heart Community Services, and Camille Llanes Fontanilla, who is the Executive Director of Somos Mayfair. So Camille and Poncho, who's going first?
I guess I can go first, and then Camille and I, we spent a lot of time preparing for this, so we've got some ideas to kind of throw your way, but we'll bounce off of each other. But I just want to introduce a couple of kind of key ideas, like 3 main groupings. There are probably 4 main groupings as we think about community engagement. But the first overarching thing is to think about this through the prism of power. And who has power, how is it exercised, and what is the proper use or exercise of power in a city governance model. And frankly, from our perspective, from a community engagement perspective, the idea is to look at this primarily through the lens of equity, about equity in terms of racial equity, in terms of like, how are we distributing power and the redistribution of power to make sure that those that are most dramatically impacted by public policy, land use, budgetary decisions are centered in a way that is making sure that the impacts of these decisions are the most deeply and broadly felt, especially by those that are struggling the most in our community and our society, and have borne the weight of decades of underinvestment and particularly decisions that bring with them the ramifications of systemic racism and injustice that have existed for a really long time. We might sometimes say, well, let's just look at where we stand right now, moving forward, and everything needs to be fair. Well, things are deeply unfair and have been unfair in our communities for a long time. So centering equity is the first element, and I'll come back to it in a second. The second thing is process. There are process changes that can happen within the existing architecture of how we make decisions and other things that could be useful. And the third is the principle of lived experience. Those that have the deepest kind of lived experience can be helping very directly to be shaping types of experiences. So don't do things for people without people is one of these concepts. So going back to that first thought around equity and decision making, the idea is that if you're going to make a decision that's going to have a disproportionate impact on certain kind of communities, you have to be able to make sure that their voices are sought out in a very different way, not just advertising and saying, come to City Hall and testify in this environment that's very foreign, difficult, and really meant to be creating that distance between those in power and those without, but really creating a different kind of process where those that are impacted are consulted in a deep and meaningful way by community partners and institutions that they trust. And you're digging into those kind of conversations on a level playing field, not having people testify in a dispassionate, like scary kind of form. It needs to be broken down in ways that are really relevant to people's lives. So that's one element that can happen. And I know Camille they've done some really amazing work around some land use policies, some other things they can talk a little bit about. The second bucket, kind of going to process changes, are ideas like when we have traditional mechanisms, commission meetings, like council meetings, other types of things, how do you make these things more relevant to individuals? If you're going to make them come and jump through these hoops, how are we meeting people more where they're at? Language access is still terrible in the city. Making these materials and resources available to folks, how are we advertising broadly, reaching channels, deputizing a different community trusted partner and organizations to be the ones that filter that information for important public policy decisions, making sure there's a real opportunity for discussion and dialogue that happens, not just a one-way kind of street. And then when you are making decisions, if you're utilizing neighborhood associations or organizations like Somos, like to be kind of some of those folks, making sure we're channeling some of that input through a traditional process, you need to make sure that when you go through a process, you're making real notifications that are happening to people around of documentation, around if you're uploading documents for the public to be able to see, how's your notification system so that people will know and understand that that's there for them. And then most importantly, is circling back with decisions that have been made in a lot of different ways. So the last bucket is around lived experience. And this idea of lived experience is that there are nodules and there are places in public decision-making where you're going to want to have some ongoing, constant, source of information and trusted resource. And that means like being able to deputize a group of folks with lived experience to provide advice. One thing many of you are aware of the Health and Racial Equity Task Force that City Council Member Carrasco helped orchestrate, and Supervisor Chavez, that they were working on. One of the recommendations out of that task force was doing something like Seattle has for a COVID kind of response task force that includes people with lived experience. They run a committee every week during this crisis that's been providing input in terms of how to be able to deliver services and how to be able to reach out to community and those kinds of things. And we've done we've invented similar types of programs, but it doesn't happen at the same frequency where decisions around vaccinations or testing or resources or support, those kind of things happen. And we've had to stand those up and we develop those on an ad hoc basis. The institution should be thinking about centering some of those ideas right there. And then one last point, but I want to give Camille the floor in terms of like where some of these ideas and where they've actually come to fruition through the work of Somos and other organizations.
Thanks, Pancho. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see so many friends and colleagues on here. Pancho and I did get a chance to check in before this meeting, and so I want to start by saying that the general buckets that he shared are consistent with the best practices that we as an organization, a 23-year-old grassroots organization, have followed. I think for the purposes of your work, if I can share some very specific things that fall within those buckets and maybe how tactically we've tried to do that in our work, to give you all some things to think about is really segmenting it into, so what does this all mean? How do we demonstrate equity and power, shared power, and what is proper channels of process? So along the lines of power, really making sure that all of you on this committee acknowledge that you all are privileged to be in this space. There is inherent privilege with you being able to apply for this commission seat, to sit there, and to have the technology and the language access to have been able to apply, right? And so I think that's, and then to have council members appoint you. So being able to acknowledge that, and then thinking from your privilege, how do you want to invite people in, is my first point of advice. The second piece is, once you start to think about community engagement, really trying to figure out, so what are we trying to engage the community for? Is it because we want broader voices and broader communication, but we're kind of going to just take the information and hold it there? Or are we going to use this to really guide you in your decision making? I think as a commission, you all have to decide, what are you going to do with that information, right? I think far too often communities, especially highly impacted communities by everything, get asked a lot to weigh in on what they think and feel and hear. But oftentimes, we can keep saying the same thing over and over again, but it's never part of the actual decision that comes to fruition. And so being clear on the front on what you want to achieve from community engagement, and then being clear with the community once you come out to the community on what those expectations are. If it is input for input's sake, name that. But if this is really going to shape your decision making, let the community know what they can expect from you. In terms of process and really bringing people with lived experience to the table, creating a sense of belonging in a space, right? So making sure people have information ahead of time, going to their trusted allies and organizations and neighborhood associations to kind of give the individuals that you would be inviting a sense of, what is the agenda? What are we asking of them? Is there space to kind of get to know each other in the beginning before we just kind of provide testimonial? Making people really feel like they're a part of this space is another really critical piece. And if you see leadership radiating from neighborhoods or from people with lived experience, acknowledging that too, whether it's, just by way of general thank yous, but even if you can, stipending people who are showing up and coming to spaces beyond their work life is really important to acknowledge too. So I think if there's an opportunity to do something like that, that's another important piece. And I think, you know, taking action. So like I mentioned, if you're being clear about your expectations, at some point you're going to take action, you're going to make decisions. It's important that if you told the community you're going to reflect their input in those decisions, being able to show them specifically the tangible action that you took or the tangible decision that you took that was guided by that, so that you can continue, so that we can actually continue to build trust with the broader community in this kind of engagement. If it's helpful at all, Somos has put together an 8-point philosophy on community engagement, since we have been doing this kind of work for over 2 decades now. And so Fred, I'm happy to share that with you for you to share with the full body. But a lot of these things fall into the buckets that Pancho had shared. And in this document we've created, it kind of gives posing questions, and in some instances, some examples of how to bring that to life.
The only thing I'll just add as kind of wrap up is some other thing for you to be considering when you're thinking about power and community engagement is some of the most important decisions or recommendations you're going to be making as a commission involve where does power sit with, and the idea of how do we want to see power happen. And I think this is one of the challenges that we've had some conversations in community as well. The idea of centering power through a centralized source, whether it's the mayor or the city manager or something like that, that presents, you know, really inherent challenges, because ultimately from an equity perspective, what are we doing to devolve power? What are we doing to try to make sure that the voices of lived experience, the voices of the people that struggle the most underneath the challenge in our community, and the legacy of systemic oppression that exists within our structures, land use, budgeting, other types of things, all these different policies are still there. How are we making sure those voices are really present with that? And so in an ideal sense, you actually have more of a people's assembly. You actually have you have more council districts, you have more voices and more structures that actually are centering the voice of council members versus, and the representatives and those things, rather than giving and centering more into one individual or one particular shop. And I think those are the things that, how are you creating those systems, regardless of whatever you decisions or recommendations, you're not going to make decisions, but what recommendations you make, you need to make sure that we're actually doing so in a way that are lifting up those voices, making sure they're part of the process, and that you're actually showing impact on people's lives. And I can't emphasize that. What Camille said is, it is incredibly disrespectful to ask people what they think and then don't do it, and don't do a darn thing about it. And I think that is one of the most important principles. Don't ask people questions about how to improve their lives or how to, you know, make any kind of decision if ultimately you're just going to decide to ignore it. And please, I think I heard earlier that your interpretation was too expensive. You know, making good decisions is what you have to do, and you can't do that if you exclude that, you know, vast swaths of our community. So hopefully this is helpful. If there are any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Oh, thank you both. Lawrence, you're going to do questions and questions for our guests.
Yeah, we'll do the same process. Just kind of do popcorn here for folks that have questions. And Magnolia, you have the first question.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that presentation, both Camille and also Pancho. I have a question to the chair, Commissioner Ferrer. Would it be possible for community members to offer interpretation that's informal interpretation? That's just one solution that I thought of listening to Pancho speak, but also understanding the budget concerns that we were told about.
Can I make just one clarification? We actually are going to ask you all for that kind of specific recommendation before we wrap up tonight. So I would love to focus our questions on our two guests while they're on the call with us, just to respect their time. And then please do keep ideas like that, and we will ask you to share those before we wrap up today. So if you have any questions for Camille or Pancho, would love for you to,
Sure.
yeah.
Pancho, do you guys ever, or Camille, do you have groups that would do informal, free of charge translation? If you know of any, please let us know.
And either of you feel free to jump in and answer, or we could just there's nothing to say, or just let us know. We'll move on.
I mean, I just want to say that I recognize the budget constraints, but I think one of the things that we've done over the last few years is help primarily immigrant women of color build out their own cooperative business, who can both help and support spaces and organizations that are in need of translation, but also do so for a living. And so I think it's important to just acknowledge that we're asking community members to bring a value, one that can really help your work moving forward, or the city's work moving forward. And I think, to be able to honor people for the time and talent that they bring is one part that is critical to community engagement in a very deeply rooted way that's culturally relevant, but that also acknowledges them as people.
Yeah, I would second that, and we actually use the cooperative that had started for a lot of our meetings and for many of our things, because we think that's just it's a sunk cost of actually democracy.
Thank you, Jose.
Yes, question for either Camille or Poncho. What have been some of the challenges in getting the community to participate virtually through Zoom or other internet platforms as opposed to in person?
Well, obviously, technology access is a huge barrier. A lot of folks do not have access to it or have a sense of being able to do it, and also the language access, which we mentioned before. If you don't have interpretation and you're not able to do that, it's a different kind of thing. When we've been accompanying folks to City Hall, and we could have people are actually participating together and helping each other with that. There have been processes. It took us a while to be able to push for that. Also. It's a big challenge when we all become accustomed to, or many of us have been accustomed to actually living at work. But the challenges of these events, permeating our spaces with our children, our families, and some other things become very different. So us being able to have events where we have childcare and other things, we can't provide that. So children are entering spaces, and these meetings are taking oftentimes during meal times and other types of things that are a real challenge. So similar things that we've had before that we've been able to get around, but it's been harder to be able to organize and be able to get people into that. But it's also made it more possible for other voices and spaces. But I think it's tilting things even further towards those that have access to technology, have resources, have childcare, have other types of things. So you have even more representation of people that have privilege versus those that don't.
Yeah, I would echo some of that. I think in-person meetings, standard for us is just like Pancho said, a meal, translation services, as well as childcare are just the starting baseline to make sure that people can join us in our meetings. So with people not meeting anymore, we've diverted some of that resource to having technology classes for community in the languages that they speak, so that they can understand how technology works. How do you use Zoom, or how do you use this app? And I think for the purposes of your commission, you're going to want to think about, what organizations or entities have been investing in that kind of support for community, and then who can maybe connect you to the individuals who have learned to do that. I think it's been interesting. I agree with everything Pancho said. And also in some of our spaces, we've actually seen a lot more engagement, school districts, county meetings, from people who, once they learn how to use the technology, are showing up in greater numbers, as long as there is that translation function. And so making sure that you have the Zoom application that allows for interpretation in multiple languages has definitely helped.
Thank you both.
And Camille, when you say a Zoom function that allows for that translation, I'm not aware of a normal Zoom function that allows for that, but can you
You know what? My staff
Elaborate.
would know this better. I'll be
Okay.
honest. There is a back end piece to Zoom where if you set up the meeting with translation functions ahead of time, you'll have like a globe at the bottom of your Zoom, and people can choose the language that they need, and you can have simultaneous translation happening in multiple languages, which is very efficient and allows for a lot of people to participate at one time.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Johnson.
Thank you, Pancho and Camille, for that presentation. So I have a question in terms of how would you kind of introduce this topic, a charter review commission, to the community? It's not at all a sexy topic. You know, just for me alone, speaking to the Vietnamese community, I don't even know where to start in terms of making it accessible. So I was wondering if you have any advice about that.
I'll weigh in first and then Pancho can jump in. I think for me and for Somos, it's how can you think about the decisions you're going to make as a charter review committee that then translates into people's daily lives or impacted lives. And so within the purview of your commission, as you start to make decisions, how do those decisions then yield an impact? And so I think, you know, Pancho mentioned in the very beginning, it's about power and it's about equity. And so when you think about it from that frame, the work you all are doing is going to touch people's lives in you know, enormous ways, whether we're talking about budget allocation, representation, direct services that then come from those kinds of budget decisions. And so I think if there's a way for you all to think about your communication strategy around how does this then impact people's lives as residents of the city of San Jose versus this is a charter commission meeting and therefore you should come, I think that's really what sticks with people. Pancho?
I usually keep it as simple as like, what got this process started in the first place was the idea of let's centralize power through, give even more power to one person in the system. And is that going to best serve the needs and voices of so many folks that are struggling in very different ways? And so that posing it as that question is like, do we want to centralize more power, or do we want to be able to devolve more power to more voices in a system? And we should be thinking thoughtfully and creatively about how your voice is not watered down with whatever process you have. So that would be my pitch.
Additional questions for our guests while we have their incredible lived experience with us on the Zoom room? Commissioner Matsumura.
I'd love to let Commissioner Barroso go first. I've been talking a lot.
Oh, did I miss a hand?
No, it's okay.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, please.
No, I just seriously raised it like 2 seconds before you said any more questions. So Ellie, please, you have the floor.
We have time for
no, you. Just kidding. Okay. Thanks for that. So thank you to both of our speakers, and thank you to those involved in arranging for them to be here, given all the challenges that we've been discussing earlier about putting together our agenda. And you know, it's both yourselves and the community, speaking of children in the background, have been around the block so many times in terms of processes. And so I think it was Poncho, you started to share an example of a task force that Councilmember Carrasco and Supervisor Chavez put together. I wonder if there are other like really specific examples that you're able to share with us of like if there are processes that you thought just knocked it out of the park in terms of the quality of engagement or specific practices, and the opposite, you know, protecting the names of the guilty, of course.
Go ahead, Camille.
Okay, I can't attest to whether or not this is a good idea yet, as we've only had one committee meeting, but I will say that I co-chair the Ethnic Studies Committee in the Alum Rock Union School District, and from the feedback that I've gotten from our first meeting, I feel like it's headed in the right direction. And I would say process-wise, number one, and I think, you know, it's represented on your body, we really sought diverse representation and different experiences. And so I think for your body, from what I know of the many people that are on here, I think that you've done that. From there, though, we've organized ourselves to have leads, and I'm not sure what was shared with you earlier about what you can and cannot do, but we've organized ourselves to have leads who then reach out to stakeholders within our purview who have that lived experience. And so, for example, 2 people who are now charged with gathering input and feedback, having deeper conversations with teachers as a stakeholder, for example, or parents as a stakeholder. And they've been given autonomy and authority to be able to have those meetings, to take that information, to then make recommendations to our voting body. And so acknowledging that we couldn't have 150 people call on to our committee meetings, but wanting to make sure that we got a good cross-section of diverse viewpoints and opinions, and the people who are most likely going to be impacted by the decisions we make, right? Like the teachers who are going to be implementing the curriculum, the parents of students who will be learning from the curriculum. We really guided our process and our structure in that way. So that's, I would say, something that is new, but I feel like is getting really good traction and support in the community. I think the pitfalls, the philosophy that we put together and that I did just email to Fred to share with all of you was put together because I think time and time again, this has happened in our experience. We have institutions, whether it's academic institutions or government institutions, or even, you know, larger nonprofits who kind of swoop into the neighborhood, tell us that they want to ask our community a ton of questions with hopes that it leads to some kind of ambiguous goal, collective goal or vision out there, without any specifics, kind of extract as much information as they can from our community, with, you know, limited translation or resources. And, you know, there's a promise made to the community, and so we try our hardest to find the resources to do that without resources, kind of like was asked earlier, you know, can we do this kind of thing for free, and then kind of extract the information, and then we never hear back from them again. And so when community members have this happen to them over and over and over again, it is very unlikely to compel them to then engage in another process. And so I think that is really why we were inspired to do this philosophy, and hold ourselves accountable to it too. So for example, with Somos, we use that philosophy now and will not allow institutions to come into the neighborhood and to ask us to do those things unless they're meeting the specifications that we've created. I hope that's helpful.
The example that I would bring up that comes to mind, and we're actively looking at exploring doing this here and developing that here, which is the Black Lives Matter movement in Los Angeles has developed a participatory budgeting process called the People's Budget, which creates a framing around what does community safety look like, and how do we currently spend the overall macro budget that goes into these public institutions, and getting that feedback about how do we want our priorities to happen. And I think that's a good example of participatory budgeting that's actually looking at the big picture and what are the outcomes they want to see happen. And then versus other versions of participatory governance or budgeting that have happened here, where you have a council district that will say, let's do some priorities around a $50,000 pot, because that's all that's really allocated by council district. And so people are talking about and voting for things, that's great, but it's not really looking at the big picture, the big structure, those kinds of things. So what's useful about that is like a bigger process is that you're actually educating people and getting them involved, and they're centering their values and priorities and have a way of channeling that energy. And the People's Budget in LA helped frame a lot of the conversations that really led to like reimagining how they're doing things around health and community safety in Los Angeles. We hope we're actually working right now to do that here in our community as well. But it's happening. It's not a public process. It's not a public agency process. It's actually a coalition of grassroots organizations working on it. So just the principles are there. How are we doing that? We're actually centering the voice of lived experience, working through the voices of those directly impacted, and they're the ones that are being like brought up, first and foremost.
Can I just add really quickly, because we also love the People's Budget process too. And I think one thing that kind of derailed it for our city, because I think, aspired to do something like that, that Los Angeles was doing, but also New York. It's happened all over the globe, actually. And I say this both to be a little bit punchy, but also just to like name it, like our city adopted the idea, but rather than going down the road of actually following the participatory budgeting guidelines and process, it resulted in an app that was then created to get us as citizens to provide feedback through this app. And it really took away kind of the overall intent of educating people on the ground about how these issues matter to them, and how they translate to people's daily lives. And so I think I share that because sometimes when we're not clear about what we're trying to achieve overall, we can find maybe what looks to be an elegant solution to something, especially here in Silicon Valley, that then doesn't really yield the outcomes that we're looking for.
Thank you both. Commissioner Barroso.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Camille and Poncho, for your expertise and for sharing tonight. Along those lines, I have two things that I picked up in your share out that I would love you to speak to. One of them is about providing an open space and a welcoming space, especially virtually. So some members of our community that aren't really used to engaging with commissions or with government find it very accessible and welcoming. And you just spoke to a couple of processes that you've seen work. So I wonder if you can say a little bit more about that. Is that something that the commission can take on, or something that we can recommend to the council to support us with? Or is that something that we need to reach out to our neighborhood associations or nonprofits? Is that something that they have to create that synergy, right, to kind of build that voice, right, that I think we would benefit from? And also, Poncho, like you brought up, real notification, right? If you can say a little bit more about that. Sometimes, I don't know if you meant it in this context, right? But when we post very official meetings, it's very, standard, right? It's like a contract, right? It's sort of like your line, like a bank statement or something, or like a lease, right? So like you post it on a bulletin board and you've checked it off. But I wonder what you, if real notification, if there's a way where we can marry both concepts, right? Like one, notify in the official way, but also have like a social media notification where it also comes out from the official channels, right? It also comes out from, maybe the city's public information officer or just some sort of outlet. But it is, Facebook friendly or Twitter friendly or social media friendly, where it's something that is very, as Commissioner as our vice chair said, it's not a sexy thing, but maybe we can make an agenda item intriguing, right? Through some sort of, informal, comical, meme or something. So then that will get some people to show up. So if you can speak on those two things, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I mean, I'll just say, I think those are great ideas, Commissioner Barroso. I think one of the things that's really important is context matters, and the ambassadors, the trusted, messengers really matter, and developing those kind of relationships with partner organizations are really, really critical. One of the things that we found, I think some of you may be aware of the work that we've been doing around financial relief around COVID. And one of the things that we did is we decided to design a process by working with a network of trusted organizations. Rather than saying, here's what we're gonna do for the community, if there's a problem, we actually partnered with the city's Office of Immigrant Affairs and convened like dozens, like over 70 stakeholder groups to be able to talk about what we wanted to do. And the first thing we did was we designed a survey tool from these trusted organizations to be able to go out and ask people, what kind of help do they need, and how do they need it, and what should be the criteria, and putting the voice back in their hands. But I think the ingredients there, it wasn't just a social media thing, it wasn't just a post, but it was a trusted ambassador, And it was something that was translated not just linguistically, but translated through the experience and context of the organizations and the partners that are there. And so that kind of knitting that together, I'm not sure how this results in this is not like a recommendation that you just throw into the charter and it just happens. It's an attitude, it's an approach, it is a commitment to actually making sure that those that are struggling the most, that are the most vulnerable, but also really important to what makes this community strong and whole and resilient, are the ones that are actually put in the driver's seat of community and public decision making, and being able to do so. So it's not just, but you could, if you want to drive turnout to something, you could just say something pretty controversial. Just go on Nextdoor and you get a lot of people, you can get a lot of people riled up on whatever issue, saying that they're going to be a bunch of poor people like living in your neighborhood. Sometimes does all the work for you in terms of turnout. But if you're trying to get a safe place and a real meaningful dialogue and really digging underneath those topics, you need to have those relationships with organizations that could provide context, that could actually be the ones going door to door, virtually or otherwise, and making sure that people are there and understand what's at stake in every one of these conversations.
I echo all of that. Thank you, Pancho. And I think the only thing I would add, depending on, the kinds of decisions you all make about what type of input are you seeking or engagement are you seeking and in what format, if it does end up being in this kind of format, right, in a Zoom space, really thinking about timing. I think one of the things we hear from community all the time is to have to come to provide testimonial, and you see like this 1 minute clock that is just like going down. It for people who've never spoke up in these spaces before, that is not a safe space. That just makes you feel like you need to say everything you have to say within a minute and try to make an impact. And so, again, depending on the kinds of engagement you seek, how do you maybe have a community meeting that has some explicit agreements on the front end? How are you all going to, in this role, spend more time listening versus speaking and taking the feedback from the community? And then, I know you probably don't want to give everyone 20 minutes to speak, but how do you give people some space to at least be able to articulate what's on their mind without feeling like they're going to be cut off at any moment? I think are just some of the things that we suggest.
I think also creating spaces where people can interact with each other, because this is such a terrible one-way meeting, like that kind of thing. And so, how many people have been in big Zooms, and it's like, that's why breakout rooms exist. I mean, and ways in which people can actually humanize each other rather than feeling like intimidated. Like, am I going to speak before, 300 people or 20 people? It can be very, very intimidating, not just from a language access perspective, but from like every perspective. Like, am I human here? Are people listening to me? And then you'll look at people like, staring down. Are they even paying attention to me? Are you actually, you're not even looking at the screen. I mean, and your cameras are off. It's like, am I just, like, am I being taken seriously? And I think like showing that respect and being able to do so and creating those spaces where people can interact with each other is something really important.
Great. Additional questions for Camille and Pancho before we move on? Very, very inspiring and informative. Thank you both. So, yeah, a lot for us to follow up on and talk about. If there's no more questions, feel free to stick around, but also you can have your evening back. And, thank you for the very last minute agreement to join us tonight.
Be well, be safe.
Yeah, be well. I'll come back when there's something sexy on the agenda. All right. Have a good day, you guys.
Tweet something provocative.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now is we'd love to get your input. So thinking about what you've heard, thinking about the questions, great questions, great responses. Really, we wanted to take some time now to hear from everyone around what did you hear that you think is important for us to consider as we start to put together this civic engagement plan in part of our phase 1 work. And I will ask Lawrence to facilitate this, but we're really just trying to get everyone to kind of weigh in of what was important that you heard that you think we should be considering as part of what we're doing.
Thanks, Fred. And we will do a roundtable here. We'll give everyone a minute. We want to revisit that question about additional topics, and then we need time for public input before we wrap up. Again, our intention now is just to hear from each of you about thoughts you have about civic engagement for this commission as you all proceed along your process of developing recommendations for City Council, what you'd like to consider as far as further engaging the community. So Tony, can I ask you or Megan to do a roll call to facilitate this? Or just walk through the roster?
This is Tony. Do you want me to start in the middle? We'll start with the new.
Yeah.
Start with Magnolia.
Hi, thank you very much to the speakers, to the note takers, to everybody. So I would propose that we, every other Monday when we're not meeting, just have an hour just for the public to speak, and all we do is listen, because otherwise how do we hear people? And it's true, they only have a minute to speak, and they do feel like they have to make maximum impact, and we do want to hear from people. And this whole point of doing more listening than talking, I agree with that. So I would propose that every other Monday when we're not meeting, that we just have an hour where we listen to public comment. And if fewer people show up and the public comment is less time, that's okay. But we definitely want to give a city of 1 million people an hour a month where we just, or 2 hours a month where we just listen, because this is really important, what we're doing here. And then based on everything that I heard, I do think translation is really important, especially in this particular city that we live in, San Jose. And I think at a minimum, the documents that are posted to the website of the city could be translated into 2 or 3 languages, the languages of the most populous here.
Thank you. That was a minute. Yeah, appreciate it. And just to expedite things, if you have anything to add to what's been shared already, please do that, or you can always say pass. Next, Commissioner Tony.
Linda?
Hi, everybody. So I've been an elected official for 18 years, and then I was on the Planning Commission. So I've been sitting, listening to the public for over 20 years. And whether we reach out to our constituents, or whether we, seek out Pablo and Camille to get to communities that usually don't come to these meetings, but now maybe can via Zoom. One of the most effective things for getting rid of the, I've only got 1 minute, is to get a group together who want to give a message. And each member of that group says something for a minute, and then the next person builds on that and builds on that and builds on that. So that effectively the group may get 5 minutes of letting us know how the group feels, whether it's a community of color, or whether it's a group who usually doesn't show up at these kinds of meetings and doesn't feel represented. But that to me is a very effective way of communicating something effectively, because a minute is not enough, and we can't give everybody 5 minutes. So I just want to put that out there as a way that maybe we can all reach out to the people or the groups that we know and say, hey, we're going to talk on this subject. Come as a group, and each one have a little something to say and add on to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I realize the irony of this conversation while we give each of you a minute, but sometimes our world is full of irony that we cannot avoid. Next.
Hi, this is Dan Bizzuto. My understanding was that, first of all, we're an advisory council commission, and that we're simply providing some advice to the city council, who's going to make a determination based on what they feel. Second, I believe that the city, all 10 districts are represented here. Wouldn't we allow each of the districts, the city council in that district, to provide the appropriate language interpretation to their constituents? I would kind of put it back on the city council and the districts to take care of that issue. They have money, they have their own little budgets to do that type of thing. I would think that $400 is not going to really make that much difference one way or another. We don't need to spend that kind of money in District 6 that we need to spend in District 3. So that would be my suggestion. And it would also expedite the meetings and get things going in the right direction.
Great, thank you. And Tony, next
Garrick?
name.
Garrick?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, thank you very much. Just a couple of things. One of the things I'm hearing is the importance of building a sense of community and personal connection to what the work that we're doing as a commission. I think it's hugely important. But it seems to me a lot of that trust between any kind of commission or committee and members of the community kind of is built up over sort of repeated interaction and kind of and those relationships that are built up over time. And this commission is not really built for that in a lot of, and sadly, because we meet every other week. So kind of to Magnolia's point, I think we need to find a better way once we start getting more into the deeper into the issues to be able to listen and try to build some relationships through neighborhood associations and other kinds of groups that are working in the communities every day. Without that, I mean, we're not meeting again for another month after this. So that, every other week is going to be really hard in my view to be able to build those relationships that's necessary to do a lot of the important work that we're being told about.
Thanks.
Jeremy Bruce?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, the idea, of, just, announcing these public meetings and our public hearings and just crossing our fingers and hoping that people would show up is, they're not the best way to go. And, from, the presentations and the conversations, it seems like we're getting on the right track. But, just exploring more opportunities for promoting engagement with underrepresented communities through partnerships with the CBOs. I know, like for the Station Area Advisory Group and the city's mobility plan, there were small grants programs to CBOs for more authentic, deep grassroots outreach to get community members to participate. Creating language accessible materials, popular education materials, and getting the clerk's office to actively promote these, our commission meetings, our public hearings, through all cities, communication channels. Also getting in, each of the council members and the mayor's newsletters. Really just being actively, promoting our public hearings and our meetings. And then, for our
Thank you, Jeremy. That was a minute. And that we will always accept more ideas down the road, but just want to make sure everyone has a chance to talk.
Ellie?
Thank you. The city clerk at our last meeting sort of started to go over the resources available to us. I'm wondering if we could, as a commission, just request sort of a full listing of, first of all, what are the existing city channels where we could get the information out. They've kind of been referenced in various ways, but if we could really get a full understanding of that, I think that would be very helpful. And then also, besides that, what are all the resources available? There's some staffing. If we could get a copy of the contract, very grateful to have the support of Civic Makers just to understand what's within that scope. There's been a reference to the translation budget. How do we understand the full nature of that budget for translation and interpretation? Interns, we're going to have a lot of research. And so I'm kind of lumping the public engagement needs together with a lot of other needs. But if we could get in writing just the full understanding of what are the resources so that this commission can really do its work, and if we see limitations, how we're going to take those on, that would be tremendously valuable, especially in relation to potential community partnerships like Commissioner Bruce was talking about. Thanks again.
Great, thank you.
T?
Yeah, a quote that my father likes to throw around in the household is the one from JFK at his inauguration, which is always like, ask not what you can do for your country, but ask what you can, ask what, well, ask not what the country can do for you, but ask what you can do for the country, right? So I think turning that to where we are now, it's all the more important that from our end, instead of saying, hey, what are the resources that can be provided to us, we start thinking in our own personal capacities, what type of effort we can do. So Jeremy mentioned it greatly, as well as Professor Garrett Percival. Start reaching out to the neighborhood association, start reaching out to the council folks and say, hey, what are kind of, I'd like to reach out as many people as I can. And I think you two, or however many groups there are out there, you would be a great asset, and start utilizing them to their fullest capacity, so that not only we get the feedback from those who are in attendance today, which are the 12 that are sitting in this virtual meeting, but those who, given their busy capacities, don't necessarily have the ability to attend these sorts of meetings. So that's just something to keep in mind for the future.
Great, thank you.
Yang Zhao?
Yes, I know that the mayor's office and each council from time to time, they use Nextdoor to post meeting informations or other things that they want the city to know. So I'm just wondering if this can be used as a announcement tool, the civil engagement, because there is a discussion session available through that. The other thing I would like to mention is, besides the language barrier, I think there is a knowledge barrier as well. This commission, from its name, it's really hard for folks to understand what this mean. It's not like a art commission or library commission, so people can know immediately what we do. So some basic background introduction or information to let folks know what we're doing, how this will impact their life, that will be helpful for their interesting and engagement, I think.
Thank you.
Veronica?
Great, thank you. And I also want to, again, highlight about the language and also put on closed captioning. I know I have even students that are hard of hearing, and I know that closed captioning will be something that would be very useful, not for them, but for a lot of people. So definitely thinking about closed captioning when we're thinking about language. And also, as well as, I know that's something that one of our speakers spoke about was having kind of leads and going into community, right, and doing that engagement as well. And that's something that we can do. And I know that, please correct me if I'm saying your name incorrectly, Young, was talking about possibly giving what a charter review is and what, that educational background with not just like, I'm here and I'm going to give this beautiful PowerPoint, but with a lot of auditory and visuals to be able to digest. Because I know I have a hard time as well, and I have to spend quite a long time on it. So definitely looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry? Oh, before Sherry starts, I wanted to say that the YouTube broadcast is closed captioned. So if somebody wants to watch live on YouTube, they're getting closed captions there. Okay, now Sherry.
Thank you. I don't have a lot more to add. I think everybody so far has had great ideas. I just want to stress again that in 2021 in San Jose, it's going to be difficult to have all stakeholders at the table without some linguistic support.
Thanks.
Emmy?
Sorry, did you say Sammy?
Yes, Sammy, sorry.
Again, great ideas. I just wanted to focus on the neighborhood association and social media for getting this stuff out. Yeah, it's a very complex, I guess, charter for us to really look at and how we're going to change if they take our recommendations. But that's all I have. Thanks.
Great, thanks.
Luis?
Yes, thank you, Tony. I would say that I echo what has been said. For example, Commissioner Magnolia, you brought up how we can use the off meeting slots, and I would also explore the idea of maybe opening up the Zooms on the day of meetings earlier. The commissioners, we don't have to arrive earlier, but maybe a 5 o'clock or a 5:30 start time for open, like just very informal Q&A. People want to get caught up with what's happened. And maybe a facilitator from a neutral party, civic makers, interns can facilitate that. So then once the conversation starts at 6, everyone is pretty caught up. And also to Commissioner Young's point, yes, I also feel that there's a knowledge gap that we do need to fill. And maybe there's something that we can put out on how to engage meetings like this and what people should expect, because it's very formal. But I think a very casual approach to it would really help the public. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lun?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes. I think it would also be helpful if this commission were to somehow debate internally and come to, I guess, choke points or points where it would be most helpful to get public insight. Public insight is important, but we just open it up and tell us what's on your mind 1 minute at a time. It becomes too much to process. So our role, as I see it, is again to write the Federalist Papers or the equivalent of it. And so we're making arguments, for strong mayor or against strong mayor or devolving power or some third, fourth, fifth government structure, however we decide to, and just writing out the arguments and to put it out to make a public document to flesh out arguments. And I think it's most helpful to me is to go and hear how whatever potential ideas we're thinking about might impact the public and how the public feels about potential ideas. But we should direct public discussion towards some ways, channeling it some ways that would be most beneficial to us as a commission to do our work. And so I would just flag that. We are.
That's a minute, Lund. Yeah, thanks.
Jose?
Nothing for me at this time.
Jeremy Avila?
Jeremy stepped away, so.
Oh, that's right.
That back, yeah.
Frank?
And just to add to the conversation, I think we need to think about what we're going to do with all the public input that we get. So is it just a matter of informing us in terms of our recommendations, or are we trying to act as a conduit to the council to give them kind of the temperature of the community of what they think in terms of each of the options that we kind of come up with? So I kind of like the idea of, if we can, is our community meetings, if we can flesh out these options and kind of turn it into a, I forget the term, but where we kind of get the input of the people and kind of get a sense for, are they more for this kind of system or another kind of system? So anyway, what should we do with the information once we get it?
Great, thanks.
Enrico?
All right, just want to agree with much of what I've heard. I do want to ask that we do have, I think it was a request to have something placed on the agenda so we can talk about the resources that we have for outreach. I think it's so important that we are providing translation. Often people of color are left behind, they're ignored, and saying we don't have the budget for it. But these are the same people that are contributing to the budget of the city. The same people are contributing to taxes within this community. Let's not leave these people behind. So I would like to have that agendized. Also, I believe, Lawrence, you had a request for other things that we may want to talk about in the charter. I'm just going to say broadly, I've looked at sections 800, 900, 1000, 1200, and 1900 are all areas of the charter in the entirety that I would like to be able to discuss. And this is in addition to the things that we identified early on. I told you I was going to read those 90 pages.
You did, and I did not doubt it for 1 minute. So we will come back to that, but thank you for sharing, and just make sure we caught those as 800, 900.
1,000, 1,200, 1,900.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Elizabeth, I have 3 names left. Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, I would just kind of go back to my earlier comment about us having a very good, solid discussion about the very reason that we are all here, from the very root of the effort to get us here, because this will help us inform in almost an elevator statement to our public, to our neighborhood meetings, what we're actually doing here. So other than that, everything everybody has said, I really appreciate.
Great, thank you.
Christina?
Yeah, so I would want to echo what my fellow commissioner said about language access. I would also say when you do interpret, make sure that the language is accessible as well, because people are coming in from different education levels, even if they do speak another language. So that's important. I also want to ask if we can partner with nonprofit organizations in order to do community engagement, since those are the organizations that community trust. There is a lot of distrust in governments and different ethnic groups. And then the other one is advertising on ethnic media. We're talking a lot about social media channels, but that comes with privilege. That means you have access to internet. Not everyone has access to internet, which has been very clearly shown during COVID. So how do we get to ethnic medias, look at radios, look at newspaper, to let people know that this is happening and also educate them about the Charter Review Commission? What are we doing here? Thank you.
Thank you.
Finally, Barbara?
After all that, I wasn't ready. I agree with the focus that we've evolved over the last period of discussion. I think education is really important for groups that are coming in to talk about this, because a lot of them, if we're talking about reaching folks who are not normally engaged, they probably don't even understand the process of government here, and that's a challenge. I was glad Christina mentioned what I was thinking, which is I want Somos Mayfair working on the East Side education part of it and the engagement, because Camille is so good at doing that. And I think it would be good for us to take a look at her. I think it's 9 or 10 points of how to do effective outreach. Just for education. It's fabulous, and they know how to use it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, very much appreciate that input, and yeah, Fred and I will see what we can do to work that into the work plan. I did want to just revisit that open question that we paused while we had our guests, and that question is, what topics would you like to add to a list of study topics to consider before our next meeting, and also that call for the public to share additional topics as well. We've heard a number of things, but not everyone had a chance to share. Let's see, the topics I was tracking were the sections of the city charter that Commissioner Calendar just mentioned, alternative government forms, third forms, campaign finance reform, history of this issue in San Jose, other thoughts right now that folks have about specific study topics. We also have an intention to dig into specific examples from across the country, inspiring examples, as have been mentioned, from cities of similar sizes. So that's on the list as well. Jose.
I know we have 2 case studies coming up. Be curious to learn also about the recent one in Sacramento. They had their Measure A recently in November. That proposal did not pass in November. It'd be curious to find out what were some of their challenges or issues, and find out more from the people that were there on the street, trying to see what happened.
Great. Thank you. Other thoughts from folks right now? That has not been Commissioner Depp.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to the commission to learn basically like how a bill becomes a law or an idea becomes an ordinance in the city of San Jose. What's that process? So we can really kind of look at, why are we even talking about potentially changing it? What's good, what's strong, what works, and why might there be room for improvement in any direction? And also,
And you're specifically talking about should council make put legislation to pass an ordinance or
just any hypothetical idea that any council member or citizen would have. How does that become an ordinance? Like what is what is the direction and the Candyland maze that it has to go through to get 6 votes? To understand the current process that we're critiquing.
Right.
But then also maybe to understand the history or the context of why we're discussing this right now. In the last 6 months or 1 year, what was the history of forming this commission? Like what the idea from the mayor and the public sentiment and the timing and running for mayor in 2 years versus 6-year term, all that stuff. Why why are we here today?
Great, thank you, Commissioner Marshman.
The idea of expanding the scope of discussion is really attractive, except for the deadline. And I think we need to be careful as we look at expanding our discussion, how it directly affects the core issues we were expected to address, and how much time it's going to add. I think, maybe the commission could be extended after it makes some of these basic decisions and look at other aspects of the charter. But I'd like to see us focus pretty quickly on what we need to do.
Got it. And Vice Chair.
I just wanted to echo what Commissioner Posada said about looking at Sacramento. I know that they had that on the ballot, I want to say a couple of times, and they were kind of back and forth. So I want to understand why that was. And I want to see what other cities who are in our same place, who are considering to do strong mayor, but then decided not to do that. So I want to look at why they chose that too.
Great. Commissioner Rocio.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I read the charter as well. And as a first-time commissioner, I too, I was trying to keep up with the layout, the format, the way that it was laid out. But to your question about, is there something that could be further explored or clarified in terms of the charter? I think it would help all of us kind of see the charter as an accessible document, right? Something that we can work with. So one of the 3 things that I would love more clarity on is everything, all the articles read pretty bureaucratic. And then we get to the last one, the act to limit urban sprawl. And that sort of seems like something contemporary, something that just kind of came up. And I wonder what the history is behind that, and how does that type of issue like make it on a charter, and other issues don't make it on the charter. I thought that was a pretty interesting article at the end of the charter. And the second one is the section on boards and commissions. So I saw that 3 were highlighted, but I know we have, over 20. So I wonder the history behind those 3, why those 3, and how do the other ones kind of fit into the charter. And the last point would be, I also know that the city works a lot with unions, and there was a big highlight on also police and fire, right? In terms of national disasters, how do we leverage, them in terms of also like retirement, And similarly, how do certain organizations or unions that the city works with, how is it highlighted and not highlighted in certain areas of the charter?
Okay, so
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So just for clarity on that one, you just want to understand how bodies like unions or other organizations are their interaction with city government is mapped out in the charter.
So
or clarified, or
yeah, thank
could
you.
you
Thank you for the
restate that again? Yeah.
Yeah. So the charter obviously is, like the city's constitution, right? Like sort of. And the privilege, right? That some of the commission, well, I don't know if the privilege is the right word, but maybe perhaps, but like certain commissions or certain organizations that the city works with is obviously much more meaty, or someone felt along the lines of like, hey, this one deserves its own article, this one deserves its own provision. And just understanding the thought process on why certain commissions, certain like bargaining units, I guess you would say, have a place in the commission and why some don't.
Got it.
Yeah, because, and I bring that up, just because I know that part of our work is also, obviously the 5 or 4 objectives of our commission. But if time allows, we're also charged with seeing the city and what we can do to make it much more inclusive, much more equitable. And I think if we begin to explore some of those questions about like what we see in the charter and what we don't see in the charter, would kind of help us, again, if we have time, to explore those areas.
Got it. Thank you. Other topics, Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you. So I think it would be helpful. Right now, we sort of have the dichotomy of mayor, council, or council manager. But if we could actually break that down a little bit and get a comparison from a number of cities of what are the actual powers of the council, what are the powers of the mayor, what are the powers of the city manager, who are the other elected offices within that city, what are the accountability mechanisms for those respective roles, roles of appointed commissions, the number of council members as well. I know there's some articles out there arguing about the importance of the number of council members, the size of their staff. So I think kind of breaking apart those dimensions of it would be really valuable. I also think if we look at what are some of the major issues of concern to the public right now in San Jose, and if we can try to understand more about where we could trace those issues back to the charter, which isn't a direct translation or an obvious one, but one of our speakers tonight raised the issue of budget equity. Where do we see examples of tools and charters to deal with budget equity? Also, police accountability. A charter is often a major tool. We just made a change on that in November. As well as houselessness and housing are a major issue right now in San Jose. Not an obvious one to deal with in the charter, but if there are examples out there that we should learn from, that would be really valuable.
All right, thank you. Anything else right now that comes to mind? All right, well, as always, if there's anything else, please send it along to the city clerk, or I'll make sure that you all have my email in this next round of communications from the city clerk as well. Always happy to hear from you. With that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for that really thoughtful conversation with our guests, as well as the great ideas in terms of the issues that we need to bring forth. At this time, I'd like to open up. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I'd like to open up from comments from the public.
I currently have 4 hands raised. If you're interested in speaking, please raise your hand. The first person up is Alina. You have 2 minutes.
Hello. So A city charter is the basic document that defines an organization, the powers, functions, and essential procedures of city government. It is comparable to the Constitution of the United States or the state's constitution. This charter is therefore the most important legal document of any city. Now, regardless if you want to acknowledge this as a constitutional convention or the Federalist Papers or a check of the box for council, this document is the most important legal document of any city. And from Len Diep's editorial comment and building off of Luis Borussio's comments, it seems they have revealed perhaps an area of improvement, which is council is not bound to the decisions of the board, to the recommendations of the board and commission, which is section X of our city charter on page 35, not 34 as listed in the table of contents. And boards and commissions are supposed to be a place for residents to be more involved beyond public comment and beyond voting. This is what we were told. And, as part of that, but as it's currently written in our charter, is kind of seeming to be a toothless process, especially if the council, have the power to kind of disregard recommendations and change whatever they want. I mean, where is the accountability, to the people in that? And I would like for us to look for more accountability in this process. And additionally to that, I think it's interesting that civic education stops at a state level. Cities were completely left out of schools. And so how about a right to accessible civic education on a city level, the level that's most impactful to us, a clear process to participation, and a means to do so. And under the equity lens, I think that all commissioners should be stipend. And I did write a letter to the Office of Racial Equity petitioning that. I think that it's a privilege for people to volunteer their times for free, and not everybody has that privilege. And if we really want to increase diversity of voices to be in this process, then we need to remove all economic barriers to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Paul Soto's next.
Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. This is an interesting conversation because Blair Beekman and myself literally attend every single council meeting for the entire duration of the council meeting. We also attend every single subcommittee meeting for the duration of the committee meeting. We read all of the memos and we comment on every single topic. Okay, so Mr. Beekman and myself, and we've been doing this for years. Okay, so we're bringing a perspective that echoes on a daily basis precisely what Pancho Guevara and Camille were speaking about. Okay, however, there's Chicanos on the west side as well. And so what I would like for this committee to do is a little bit of homework. Read Starvation Under the Orange Tree, written by John Steinbeck. It is an essay that he wrote while spending time in the camps on the east side in Salsipuedes, which I am a descendant of. I am also a California registered Native American. I am a part of the Kumeyaay tribe. We were the first ones to come into contact with Junipero Serra. So this is the space in which I'm moving in, okay? And so I'm having to be put in a position to where I have to educate Anglos on their history, my history, on the contemporary context in which power is administered and how white supremacy affected the context in which I'm functioning. Okay, and he articulated that clearly in those books. The second essay is Dubious Battle in California, written also by John Steinbeck after he spent times in the camps. So it's interesting to hear people talk about equity, but they don't know what it looks like. I do, because I am the product of inequity over decades in San Jose. I have 15 ancestors buried in Oak Hill Cemetery as a testament to how rooted I am in the.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Robert Brownstein.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. A couple of points. First, I'd like to tell you how you can get the money for the translation services that you want. You send an immediate and urgent memo to the city council signed by all of you that says you cannot do your job and you will not fail at your job if they don't provide you an adequate budget in order to be able to provide translation services. the city is going to spend a ton of public funds putting a measure on the ballot, and someone is going to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to finance a campaign to pass a charter amendment. It is crazy to be cheap on translation services when so much is going to be spent on those other aspects of the project. Secondly, there's been a lot of talk about the difficulties of having people speak for a minute and be able to be functionally contributing to the process. That's true. Nobody can say very much clearly in a minute, and there's no reason to limit it that way. You can speak to people for 5 minutes, 10 minutes or longer. You just can't do that as a committee of the whole. You need to decentralize, delegate certain people to meet with different constituencies and have long, lengthy conversations in order to be able to get more detailed input back to the committee of the whole. The people you delegate to can report back. And finally, in thinking about how you're going to deal with these structural issues, strong mayor or some other structure, always remember, structure is a tool. What you first want to be thinking about are your goals. Are your goals representation, diversity, accountability, management efficiency, what? Then you can weigh a structure against your goals. Thank you very much.
Blair Beekman. Blair is the last speaker.
Hi, can I go?
Yeah, just another hand went up.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the words of Paul Soto. And I was going to speak on, I was very impressed with the ideas of people's budget tonight. I mean, the fact that that was the topic of conversation. Thank you. You know, it's difficult. For the past few months, I've been at city council meetings trying to just simply mention the words equity and reimagine, that they are not fearful, frightening terms, that we shouldn't be afraid to use those terms in public. This was a few months ago. And, you know, for as much as we study these things and talk about it between each other and, you know, study its practices in city government, there is a certain taboo to talk about these subjects openly and publicly, to say that these are our better ideals and our better persons. And we're just learning how to do that now, I think. So good luck to ourselves in doing that. And what the previous speaker just spoke about, I mean, to myself, I feel it's really important that that is sort of the lens that we use in our decision making, and that's the most vital, important thing. It is from that we can talk, maybe have a possible study session on strong mayor proposal ideas, that everyone can get a sense of what exactly those things are. But it's my hope that we can talk through the lens of equity and reimagine, and just a really promising future of community sharing space with government more. I mean, that is the goal at this time, and it's very, very possible. The work I do with accountability with technology makes that possible, where community can really have an important part in the future of their government. And so that's something that's growing and needs to be noted. So good luck in your efforts, and I hope I can speak more a bit later on tonight. Thank you.
Jeffrey Buchanan.
Members of the commission, Jeffrey Buchanan on behalf of Working Partnerships USA. Yeah, I think this was a really important conversation tonight about how do we do civic engagement. I just want to take the commissioners back last year to July 1st, where really I think the beginnings of this commission came into being through more than 11 hours of council debate, significant portions of that public comment from members of the community that were upset about a set of proposals around changing the city's charter that were done with pretty much zero community participation, at least in the portions discussing changes to a strong mayor system. Certainly there had been tens of thousands of community members who'd engaged in conversations around some of the other changes in that proposal. But just to say, certainly there's questions around the budget. I'd agree with Mr. Brownstein's comments. We need to look and see what we can do to budget for this. There's a lot of council members that are really invested in the work that you're doing here on the commission. that want to see this commission be a success and deliver a set of hopefully widely supported ideas for amending the charter. Certainly budgets are constraining, but trying to think about what kind of action this commission can take. There were a lot of good ideas put forward by commissioners. Commissioner Bruce's examples around looking at grant funding in popular education. I think the examination of what resources are out there from Commissioner Matsumura. Commissioner Calendar also had some good ideas. I would hope that while I understand the meeting is over here, that the chair takes some of those kind of best practice ideas that came from the commissioners and were echoed, I think, in the comments from Camille and Pancho. And we don't shy away from asking for the resources we need to make this a success, because it's important, it's complicated, and I don't think we want to end up with 11-hour public meetings, shutting down the good work of this committee.
And that was the last speaker.
Great. Thank you to members of the public for your thoughtful comments. We definitely have heard them, and we will be working on the plan and definitely incorporate your input. Any final questions or thoughts before I close us out?
Yeah, we had Commissioner Calendar, Commissioner Marshman, and Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask, I made the request and I don't know that it was confirmed but we have the resources discussion on the next agenda. So I'd like to understand how the resources have been allocated so that I can then determine what action that I'll be calling for. Would that be on our next agenda?
Yeah, why don't I take a second before I ask for commissioners' questions, maybe I'll answer them just in terms of next steps. So we heard great suggestions from our two guests, and we heard great suggestions from our commissioners. I think there's two issues that I will follow up with in terms of either we're going to get them as agenda items to discuss if they're ready, but one is the resource question. Like, what are the resources available?
I'd like to know the budget, because what I've heard is, I heard the $400 an hour, what it takes for translation. So I'd like to understand what are the resources, what are the budgetary resources that have been allocated towards this process, so that we can have a discussion of will we be able to achieve the outcomes that we're intending to achieve with those resources.
I'm sorry, that's exactly what I was trying to say. So, yes, so we will have the report back on what are the resources, what's the budget constraints, what are all the things that the city's going to kind of start with, and then we'll be able to have the discussion of what do we need that's outside what those needs are, and we can go back to mayor and council to make those requests if there are some. So that's one big piece of what we need. We need to know exactly what the resources are, what's the budget, so that we can say it's not adequate or it is adequate, whatever areas there are. I think the second piece that I would also want to explore with the city is what are the resources that came up tonight, like suggestions that came up tonight, partnering with CBOs and having translation services from the community, and any of the resource questions that came up, I would add in addition to what's the current kinds of resources and what are those possibilities. If we haven't asked, perhaps there are available resources that we just haven't asked for yet. So having a kind of full discussion on the resources to me is a really important next step. Also to really think through one of the things that I'd like us to talk more about, we're going to come up with a plan just as a draft to be able to say, how do we incorporate all these pieces? But the other piece that I think is really important is understanding the communication tools of the city. So a lot of questions came up tonight around communications. What is the communication plan of the city? So do we have, what is it being posted on now? What is it? What are the possibilities of what it could be posted on? And again, if that's not adequate, then what do we want it to be? So those were the two kind of homework questions I'd like to come back with. But we'll also have the draft of the rest of the plan to be able to have a really fruitful and hopefully decisive discussion around, yes, this is how we want to go forward. I also have questions about public hearing, and I'm going to go back to the city attorney around our public engagement processes. So a traditional public hearing is a listening session. It's not a discussion. But things like the people's budget process and others are very discussion oriented kinds of things. So I just want to hear from the city attorney around what are the limitations, if there are any, what are those kinds of things, so that we know what we can come back with. Again, if that's not adequate or meets the commission's desires, then let's have a discussion around that and see what other things we want to do. So I'd like to be able to be as responsive to all of the really good input we had tonight, as opposed to saying, oh, thank you very much, and then we can just go on to our next idea. So definitely we need to have a further discussion on this. I know there's commissioners that are frustrated around our timing, that they'd like to move on. I saw some commissioners drop off tonight already. So I'm also sensitive to continue to move the process forward. But Commissioner Callender, I assure you that that is one of
So, Mr. Chair, it will be on the agenda. I'd ask that the recommendation be for both discussion and possible action.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Commissioner Marshman.
We need translation. We absolutely need translation. There's just no question you can't do outreach on something like this without translation in much of the city. And we need the money for it. I'll sign Bob Brownstein's letter. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshman.
And Commissioner Matsumura.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the chair and Lawrence and to everyone for your thoughtfulness about this process. And I will confess I'm feeling some time pressure about really making concrete progress about the public engagement, especially because currently, according to our previous meeting, I think we said that we need to have that public hearing about 5 weeks from now. And our next meeting isn't until 4 weeks from now. And so I'm wondering what our options are to be able to get work done between now and the next meeting. I don't want rotten fruit thrown at me if I suggest scheduling something for February 22nd, but I will put that out there. I also don't know. I think we had requested to have a work plan agendized for action at every meeting, so that we would have the option to be able to have some flexibility around that. I don't know under the current agenda what ability we have to propose work between meetings, but I wanted to put that out there for recommendations from the chair or any others, commissioner staff.
Great. And Magnolia, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, but I'll call you Commissioner Magnolia.
Sure. Just following up on what Commissioner Matsumura said, I just wanted everyone to know what I'll be reading since we have a month. The League of Women Voters kindly put together something that they put on the agenda. It's attached, it's their recommendations for what we should be reading. It's attached to today's agenda. There's a hyperlink that goes to their website, which then goes through all their articles. And what I will be reading is the first five recommendations. The first four are not very long. What they suggest we read, 13 pages, 13 pages, 17 pages, 17 pages. That's not so much for 4 articles that they handpick that they think is relevant. The fifth thing I'll be reading is just 3 chapters. I don't know how many pages it'll be, but I just wanted to share that some members of the public have given us some homework and I'm going to do it. That was all I wanted to share.
We've got one more hand from Commissioner Percival.
Thank you. I'll just make this quick because I know we're just about out of time, but I do think it would be helpful for the commission to try to, we've had a couple of charter commissions. Many of the people who served on those commissions are still around. I think it'd be really helpful to hear about some of the challenges they had as reaching out to different community groups, how they overcame some of those challenges, budget issues. So I think there's, we're new as a body, but a lot of this kind of work has been done before in the city. And so I think we could learn a lot from that. And so if we're going to bring people in at some point in hopefully a meeting that's not too far away to learn from that, I think that can really help our work.
Thank you, Commissioner Percival. We are working on invitations to lots of folks. And so some of the suggestions of the historical questions that came up in our first discussion, we're looking into making contacts with folks that will know some of that history to get us up to speed in that area. We had a holiday challenge and then another commission meeting interfering with our calendar. That's why we're meeting in a month. It will give us some time though to get a lot of these pieces put together. And I just wanted to address the issue around, we did not agendize the work plan again tonight because we weren't changing it in terms of just trying to get tonight done so that the materials that we have for tonight can be the addition to the work plan, and that'll be on the agenda for next time. And then from that point, if we adopt the work plan itself in terms of what we think it's doing, then we could look at the question of, do we want to agendize every single time for action, or are there actions we can take that don't have to necessarily be in the work plan as we move our work forward? I think that was the question that you were asking, Commissioner Matsumura, around timing. But that's why we are taking a little bit more time. But quite frankly, it will give us some time to get a lot of this next set of work done, so that when we come back, we will have a pretty fleshed out work plan and some kind of scheduling around how do we tackle some of these challenges, and then hopefully have a good discussion around a scope, because we do need to focus our scope in order to complete our tasks in terms of the timeline. Are there any other hands?
Commissioner Matsumura again.
I'm so sorry, I will try to be very quick. We did have suggestions from commissioners and members of the public to divide up public outreach. So in the spirit of Commissioner Siegel's homework, I have a list of folks that I've been intending to work with, and I wonder whether there are legal barriers to commissioners being able to communicate with each other using our city-issued email addresses, which are posted on the website, to divvy up a list of folks that we want to be reaching out to in between now and the next meeting, with our luxurious time off in a couple of Mondays.
Yeah, our luxurious time off, since I know none of these members of the community are doing anything else. What I'd really be careful to encourage you, if you're going to be in your district and you're going to be, because you represent districts, and getting information out to folks in your district, having those conversations, I think, is great, and making sure that you're careful. The one thing I would say about the Brown Act challenge for me is that if you start to make connections with each other, you have to make sure that everybody who's talking to somebody else is still in your bubble, whether you know it or not. So you want to be super careful around communication, around organizing. Folks definitely should be part of our plan. We're going to have to divide up to do lots of different community engagement experiences. Otherwise, we're never going to engage meaningfully the public. So I would just be careful and thoughtful around that. And then this next month, if you're in your district, being a representative of the district, getting your information, that's great. But then, if it's a major organization or a major person in this area, I'd ask you to wait, only because it'd be better if we all made that as part of the engagement and then divvy it up that way. So definitely work in your districts. I'm going to take the challenge that Magnolia gave us around the reading, but I'm also just going to be working on the plan, and we'll be able to get that to you the week before or earlier, so that you'll have time to review that and come back. I do want to also just mention that thanks to Commissioner Matsumura and the passage of the memo that she sent us, that is the working document that we worked on, so that this commission adopted that memo, and we tried to fulfill all the parts of it tonight. So we were working off your direction. And I just want to always go back to, like, we're hearing what you're saying and we're doing what you're saying, and then hearing again, how we got it right or not, and how do we need to kind of move forward. So I'm hoping people feel that we've talked about, had a conversation in depth with some expert outside folks about public engagement. And now we've got to put a plan together to actually see what we can do. And if they're not the resources that we need, then we've got to go get them or figure out how to get them and really create the public engagement process that we want. So I would ask that you do your duty in representing your districts to get the information and input and let people know. I mean, that's the one other thing is just the word of mouth around, you heard what are your restrictions around communication and social media and other pieces. So if you want to get the message out about within your district, that certainly is your responsibility as a commissioner. Any final pieces?
We have Magnolia again.
Magnolia, yes.
I would really be curious to know what this mayor and prior mayors feel. Why would they want additional power? How they think they could benefit? What is the reason that they want a stronger mayor form? The current mayor and also interviewing prior mayors. And then I would like to know from the city manager, hopefully the city manager feels comfortable, and all prior city managers, what is their opinion on what's working with the city manager system and what's not working? It'd be good to know. It'd be good to hear from the people that actually are doing these jobs, what they think is working and what's not working from their perspectives. I think we should include them in this discussion.
Definitely, Magnolia. We are looking at reaching out to former mayors as well as former members, former city managers who also have some perspective. Like they may be able to give us not only their experience, but now that looking back on it, here are the things that I see now that I didn't see before. So they're definitely in our friends that we're trying to convince to, get to talk to us about some stuff. So we are reaching out to lots of folks to be able to start putting these things together because scheduling and calendaring is a challenge, but definitely one of the former mayors we've reached out to, another, and one of the city managers. If there's others that when we get the plan kind of written and you're like, yeah, we need more than that. I also think looking at department heads, I mean, because they're the ones that I think can get caught in the between the city manager and a council member or the mayor's direction. So are there department heads that could talk to us and be able to be free in talking, and maybe that's former staff members who worked with, doesn't have to be this mayor and this council, but really have some experience to shed light on. So definitely a lot of these possibilities are things that we're going to try to put together for the education side of the work we're going to do. And I'm going to say that's the last word tonight. I'm going to, Tony, do I need a formal motion for adjournment and a vote?
We don't need to do that, but we do need to take open forum. But you do not need to motion to end the meeting. Once you get to the end of the agenda, it's over.
I need another open forum?
Yes, that you have a public comment for each agendized item, and then at the end of the meeting, there's open forum on any item not on the agenda.
Awesome, thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us?
I currently have 2 hands up. The first one's Paul Soto.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tony. Yes, like I said, we're gonna be here for a while. I really want to appreciate what Magnolia was saying with regard to discussing this with prior mayors. I would like to caution though, Fallon statue was put up by McHenry, and Ron Gonzalez burned us for $10 million making that backdoor deal. And so I don't know if they're like the best, authorities on, these types of issues, but I just like to put that out there for consideration. Secondly, is that the reason why I gave the perspective of John Steinbeck is because this is an objective way to assess how power and wealth was accumulated in San Jose. We still have not discussed the power dynamics that accumulated and concentrated wealth and power within Willow Glen at the expense of my ancestors in Saucipuedes. That has to be talked about explicitly, because there was so much generational trauma that flows from that tentacles into drug addiction, imprisonment, over-policing, under-policing, lack of resources in terms of the infrastructure in Saucipuedes. Okay, so we have to talk about that. And it has to come from a descendant from those areas. I'm one of them. And so that's why this is the legitimacy of these conversations is frustrating at times because I'm having to educate people around these issues. A good start point is Starvation Under the Orange Tree, but I have to caution you that when you read it, if you're a human being, you will cry. If you're not a human being, you'll just go ahead and dismiss it with real just cavalier insouciance, which is pretty much the attitude that Deb Davis demonstrated at the listening session with respect to the community engagement with regard to COVID. And so, you know, we really have to start understanding that we have to start claiming our humanity in these spaces, because the decisions that are being made by the government are literally impacting people's lives. Thank you.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, thanks a lot for the meeting tonight. I wanted to, I wrote a public comment that I hope you guys can look at tonight. You know, it spoke about, you know, we'll be starting the impeachment process tomorrow. And I'm interested how we'll be, I think an important lesson, no matter what happens, is the ideas of accountability that we can learn from it. And that I think we should all be respecting, basically. And, you know, at an interesting time that accountability is also the same concepts that something is really hopeful and positive at this time, that's really idealistic and good, that I think can invite everybody to our future. And that's where the unity is. And you know, it's larger, I think, than just strong mayor questions. That I hope it's that way that we look at things in these meetings. Is how I'm going to be approaching the subject, you know, in the next few months. And so, good luck in your efforts. About the language issue, you know, after the floods happened, there was a big uproar that, you know, in city government, we're not doing enough for interpretation issues. Why can't we just cull our energy with the people within city government and ask a bit more of them? And that can be it can be a way to use a budget that is not very expensive, basically. And I hope you can do stuff like that. I wanted to conclude, there's a long history of San Jose, you know, using this process. It's based on, you know, original corrupt mayor systems at the turn of the 20th century. The mayor current mayor wants to explore how to get out of that. But I think each time we come back to this process, we're always impressed how community works together and the council works.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. I just wanted to make sure you knew that the commissioners did receive your letter, so your written comments were received by the commission as well. Thank you all for your attention and your thoughtfulness tonight. I really appreciate it and your presence, and we will see you next time, and we are adjourned. Thank you so much.